Inside Thursday night, how's it going? Alright, strip back, good crack, multi-trade podcast. Share the knowledge you know, help to make our sector grow. Everybody's learning from experts and the journeymen. Inside.
Right, we're back. Season 6, Episode 6. I'm Stephen Buckley.
And I'm Keith Delahan.
And this is Insight, the Stripped Back podcast, sponsored by Robust Lighting.
And in association with Snickers Workwear Ireland.
Yeah, on this episode, we're going to delve into a poignant and important topic of eating disorder and mental health and the struggles that come with both.
Yeah, and look, it's not always an easy conversation, but we feel it's a necessary conversation. And we're going to try and practice what we preach, and it's in the name. We're trying to strip back the issue and, meet our two guests that we have on this evening.
Yeah, look, whether it's anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, it's all important to talk about, and it's something that us as men don't speak up about. And I think having the guests on that we're going to have on this episode today is it's going to be a challenge to hear, but it's going to be insightful for not just ourselves, but for anybody listening today, no matter what age you are, what gender you are, or what background you come from. It's going to be something to really highlight, and hopefully you can take something away from it. Yeah,
let's jump into it, because I think if anything, we're going to help people better understand it, whether you don't know much or you do know much. Two guests that we have opposite sides of the spectrum, and I think they're going to help us better understand it.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, two guests on this episode this week. We've got Conor Nolan and we've got Sean Blake, both who have suffered through eating disorders, anxiety, mental health issues, but have shown themselves and have stemmed within their lives in different forms and in different patterns. So I guess sharing both of their stories today is going to give everybody a bit of an insight and a bit of a look into how these type of eating disorders and the mental health struggles that go with them can show up.
Yeah, I think we'll jump straight into it with our first guest, Evo.
Yeah, we've got Conor Nolan joining us in the studio.
Let's jump into it.
This podcast is sponsored by Robust Lighting, the world's leading LED lighting company.
Jump over and download the My Robust app, see the full range and catalogue, and make the next order with ease.
Conor, thanks for joining myself and Kate in the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Great to finally meet you.
Absolutely.
It's one of those ones where you get to see people on Instagram, you get to see the work they're doing and the good cause that they're putting out there, which is few and far between when you're looking at a lot of the stuff on Instagram nowadays. So it's great to be able to get in and talk to you face to face.
Thank you very much.
He's a Spanish jersey on, but he's not from a very exotic part of the country.
No, quite the opposite. Yeah. If I wore the Cow jersey, you wouldn't let me in. I actually know. You know what? I would never buy. I have a fair collection of like retro jerseys. Like I have Liverpool ones and Spain ones and all this crack. But I'd never buy a new one. I'd always go as retro as I can. Like something different.
Deadly.
Yeah.
Another Liverpool fan in the door.
So I heard that. Yeah, you're like 100 to 1 now at this stage.
I'm a United fan, so
okay. It's not going well.
We're becoming extinct, you know.
Well, you could win the Europa League yet, and it could save everything. But
what's the score?
It's on tonight. I didn't check.
No one cares.
Yeah.
Was it bad? No, was it?
I don't know. Like we're bad anyway. Yeah. So we'll wait and see. We might get a bit of a.
Did you see the Arsenal Madrid game?
I watched the highlights of it, yeah.
I thought, I'm not rooting for Arsenal, but I thought it was fantastic. Like, because I was glad to see Madrid to get put out. That's the long and short. If they win too much, they've enough done. Yeah, so. Yeah.
And they robbed Trent probably as well.
I have a theory he's going to do like a Michael Owen, and he'll go away and just disintegrate. That's my theory on that.
That's your hopes,
Well, that's my hope. Well, I wouldn't wish badness on anyone, but I'm like, it could happen,
Yeah. Well, Keith was mentioning there, obviously, parts of the country they've come from. You've mentioned Cavan, so that's...
Yes, indeed.
You travelled down from Newry today.
Yes, County Down. Yeah, that's where I work.
you're working up there, but we'll take it back, obviously, to Cavan. We'll go back to the early days first, like we do with all of our guests, and try and find out a little bit what was Conor like as a kid and what was Conor like in school, type of thing. If you'd like to let our listeners know. It's
funny, so like I have young siblings. I mean, I have a brother who's 16, I have a sister who's 14, and I have a brother who's 8. So like I've been told that myself and the youngest fella are very similar. So I'm watching him grow up, and I'm told that me and him are like carbon copies from when I was that age.
Yeah.
So I'm told that like I was always quite witty, very chatty. Like I remember that I never quit talking. That's the one thing I remember about being, say, like primary school age. I was really kind of giddy and all that kind of stuff. And like, like I loved where I came from, went to a great school. Like I was the only grandchild up until like the age of 9. So I was like, I was ruined for the first few years. And I remember when my cousin James came along, I've been told, I don't remember this now, but I've been told that I had to be introduced to him slowly because it was like, he was stealing the spotlight kind of thing. Like, but no, like, came from a lovely family. I'm the eldest, and then my mother's the eldest in her family. So I met all 4 of my great grandparents on my mother's side, which is a privilege.
That's unique, yeah.
That's very unique. And like my great grandmother only died there about 3 years ago. So that's like to have relatives that that late in life is
that's mad. Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. Like it's a privilege. So no, like growing up, I was very talkative, very chatty, and like. I remember, like, my mother now would read books for Ireland, like bookshelves galore at home, and I would have read, like, the Roald Dahl books, Howard Henry. I would have ate through all them. So, like, I would have had that kind of creative kind of spark in me at a young age. I stopped reading when I was a teenager, as most kids do. But when I was in primary school, I would have ate through books and all that kind of thing. So, I actually, like, I did like school. Like, I had I suppose, flair for maths at a young age. Like, I could do stuff in my head. So, I enjoyed school very well in that sense, and I loved playing Gaelic football and all that kind of crack. But yeah, I was kind of giddy and full of energy, is what I've been told.
And did you you mentioned that creative flair that you had as a young man, but did you do much writing?
I have a vague memory of having a notepad, and I was a big James Bond fan as young as well, and like I have a vague memory of writing like them kind of James Bond-esque type stories. Now, the plot was always the same, like, but I remember writing these kind of things, and like I enjoyed, like, in school writing creative stories of that there. Now again, it did kind of simmer out in my teenage years, but it was there when I was younger, and then I kind of refound it when I wrote the book then later in life. So it came and went in that sense.
You mentioned football as well. Soccer. It's Cavan, so it's football and soccer in Cavan, isn't it?
I think we do have a hurling team now, but we wouldn't be great. We're not great at Gaelic either. But, well, Ulster champions. As I said, the only thing stranger than COVID in 2020 was us winning Ulster.
Yeah.
But, I grew up loving Gaelic football. Like, as I say, regardless of how good or bad we are, loved it. And, like, had a great passion for it from a young age, like, big time. Yeah.
Growing up in that part of Ireland and having the likes of sport and the camaraderie that comes with sport and the team... the impact that a team can have on an individual. Did you find that as a young lad? Did you find that you had good support group around you as a child, or even as an early preteen, in your maybe like colleagues or even teammates?
I did. Like when I was in primary school, I did find it, and then I think when I got into my teenage years and my mental health started acting up, I did feel more of a sense of loneliness in that kind of way. But like when I first started playing football, I really liked the whole, as you say, the whole camaraderie, the team, feeling. I really liked that, yes. Yeah. And like I find, like, if you're in school, it brings you closer to friends if you're on the same team. Now, one thing I didn't like was if you didn't play great, you go into school the following morning and you get an earful, from the lads, like, what were you doing last night? You didn't mark them. But it is, I think at all ages in life, like even the way we were discussing the soccer there a few minutes ago, it does bring people together. And I love that about sport in general. Like,
I was just going to ask, did school life and your youth, would that have played a role in future challenges that you had as a young teen?
I think the not particularly, like my experiences in primary school are very, very pleasant. Like as I got towards, say, 5th, 6th class, that's when the mental health started turning. The anorexia tendencies kicked in, and that brought with it several challenges. But no, I would say, like, my earlier years and the community spirit I felt and the family life, that only strengthened me. You know what I mean? And like the biggest compliment I think I've ever gotten with regard to this kind of work is I'm told that when I talk on stage or even here, it's that I sound very genuine. Like I'm coming from the heart.
100%.
And like my family are like that, real I think salt of the earth is the phrase you use, you know, like real genuine people,
No
you know,
BS.
no BS, exactly, yeah, and say it how you see it, like, and I think, and I owe that to family, like I got that from them, so that's I think been a huge part of, I suppose, shaping who I am now in that sense.
What would be an early sign of somebody who is maybe suffering with anorexia?
So, like, one thing I've learned in hindsight is a very big trigger is a period of change, and this is why you'll often see people, male and female, get diagnosed with an eating disorder around the age like 13, because you're going through that big transition, you know, primary to secondary school, all that crack. And so, like, I remember, like, the symptoms kind of kicked in around age 11. Like, I was playing football, like, big into fitness because I wanted to be a great player. Like, I wasn't a great technical player, but I said, right, if I'm going to be good as a player, I may as well brute force it, be big and be strong and be fast. And so I started kind of, you know, training myself, going for runs and doing push-ups, you know, the kind of the Rocky training montage, going for that kind of thing, like. And, like, it started off all well and good, but then it becomes sinister. Like, the anorexia kicks in, and the focus went from less concerned on the playing and getting the ball over the bar and more concerned with weighing yourself, getting the weight down, eating less. And I think a red flag is, if, I suppose it's hard to spot this, but for me, like when you're a child, you don't think about what you're eating. Like, you don't consciously think, you just eat what's in front of you. I was thinking about what I was eating, calculating in my head, and, like, the biggest symptom for me is, like, as you get like 12, 13, your appetite increases because you're growing. Mine did, and I didn't eat more. Like, I remember there was a standard, whatever amount of food I'd bring for lunch to school. I would have that, and then as time went on, that wasn't filling me, but I refused to eat anymore. And, like, to the point where I would nearly, like, when the bell would go for the end of lunch, I was nearly getting hungry again, that kind of thing. So for me, looking back personally, that's the first red flag. But I suppose it's hard to spot that looking in. But I think if someone very young is, like, if they're weighing their food, you know, I didn't do that, but that's a new thing now. If they're, like, very uncomfortable at the dinner table, or you can see them, I feel like you'll know when you see it. It's like if someone's uneasy at meal times, that's a big thing as well.
Did you find that, like, you know, you were doing all the steps to, maybe from the outside looking in, trying to, maybe somebody, if they were looking at you, they'd be saying, "Oh, geez, he's really trying to better himself there. He's really working on himself."
Yeah.
But in the background, from the inside looking out, you're nearly pounding yourself, like, with a bit of misery every time, because you know it's very hard to work on a body, but at the same time nearly hate it at the same time. You know,
that's the problem. It's like the anorexic mind is so ambitious and so tunnel visioned. Like, nothing. Like, if I was with the lads and, you know, you're playing on the Xbox, and then one of them brings in a few bars of chocolate or whatever, there's no willpower, isn't even a question. You're not even going to go, "Oh no, I'll have a biscuit." It's like, no, that doesn't fit my regime today. I'm not even going to look at it. Like, you know, as an adult, you'd be like, "Oh, will I, won't I?" You know, you kind of start salivating. It doesn't even register. You know, and it's like, there is a bit of willpower involved, but it's like, you're like, if I eat that now, that will ruin my day, and, like, there'll be no coming back. So it's like, you look so driven, you're doing these correct steps, but it's the motivation behind it's all wrong. Because, as I put it, like, when I started looking after my fitness, again, the motivation at first was great, and it worked because I became a better player. Like, I started scoring more and all this crack. Excuse me. But then 6 months later, I'm doing the same thing looking in from the outside. But what's happening up here, and the boxes I'm ticking per se, completely different. So that's, again, another reason why it's hard to spot, I suppose, that kind of way.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like, in terms of your behaviours then, are there other side effects for, I suppose, those around you? Obviously, for yourself, it's going to feed into everything you do, basically.
Yeah.
But from, I suppose, maybe parents or friends or on the outside looking in, like, did they have concerns for you? Or
they did? And like I remember my mother, because my mother was telling me that I think a friend of hers had a child who had anorexia as well, a female. So my mother was aware of the warning signs, and she could see, like, I wasn't eating a whole pile, was running around, you know, running a lot, going to training. Could see, like, I was a slim child to begin with, but, like, I was losing weight around the face, so it was becoming visible. And, like, my mother was pulling me aside, going, like, "Look, there's something not right here." And the thing about anorexia, such a powerful illness. My logical answer there was to be like, you are 100% right. There's something at the wheel here and it's not me, and I'm terrified. But you can't say that because the illness is there going, no. This is the more weight you lose, the better you'll feel. If you give in now and tell your mother how you feel, you're gonna get help, and that's our weight loss will be finished. Do you know? So it's like just, you know, it's like the smiling face but you're crying behind it. It's like you can't give in if you give, because in some sinister way it's like you're proud of the weight you're losing. You know, it's like because it's like it's driven by the more weight I lose, the better I'll feel. I'll feel anxious if I gain it or if I grow, but if I keep losing, I'll feel good. And it's like that box gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And the things you have to do to feel good and feel calm, it gets more restrictive. You know, this week we're going to eat one slice of bread less. We're going to go half a mile more. And there's only one way that's going to end up. And then like in the end, my parents just said, no, but you have to get help. And like, you know, my heart bleeds for parents, you know, who have kids that have it, because when something happens to your child, physically or mentally, you blame yourself. And like, my parents were fantastic, like not a foot wrong. And like the ironic thing that, when you see a child underweight, you're not being fed. Country house in Cavan, you know,
being well fed.
Scones and fried breakfast to bake the band. Like my mother and grandmother would bake for Ireland. This kind of thing, it's like, it goes so much deeper than just food, you know. And like, I remember before my book came out, I asked my mother to read it, and I said, look, if anything I say here is not fit for public viewing, you tell me. And she read it, and you know what she said to me? She said, God, Conor, reading it makes you realise like nothing outside of psychological help was going to get you out of that mess. And I says, completely. And I think for her, reading that helped her realise nothing she could have done, nothing her and my father could have done was going to change it, until I had to hit rock bottom to come back up. So that's kind of the unfortunate thing. It's like, as a parent, you can beg your child to get better and eat and all this crack until they hit that rock bottom and they get to counselling. That's when things will improve, but only then, in a sense.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, getting the help.
Yeah.
Did the penny drop then, or is it? Are
No.
you still going into that thinking, like, I'm just doing this kind of to appease everyone?
Exactly. This is a cover up. This is we're not done yet. That's the. Like, I remember I'll never forget the first session, and it was like, it's not meant to feel. It feels like an interrogation. It's not meant to feel it that way. Mother and father were there, and the counsellor, and then a paediatrician.
What age are you there at that time?
12, turning 13. Yeah. So I'm sitting here, and it's like the four of them around me, and it's like, right, it's fucking me against you four here now. Right? You know what I mean? And like they're all the love and care in the world is in that room, but you're there going, well, I tell you, like, you want the care and help, but the only way I can describe it is you and the illness are together. This is you, this is the illness, and the objective of counselling is separate the two, so you can look at this and go, okay, I am living with this, but this isn't good for me. But before you get that help, you're intertwined like this, and it's running the show. You're like a puppet on a string. So you're sitting there and you're like, I'm going to say just enough to get through this hour and look like I'm doing enough, but I'm not actually. You know what I mean? And like, I remember it took about 3 months, and then what made the penny drop was the realization that if I don't get, because I was so underweight, couldn't play football, couldn't even do PE in school. Like, the school was notified, like, Conor won't be doing PE classes or anything like that, and that kind of crack. And so what made the penny drop was, if I don't sort this out, I'll never get back on a football pitch ever again. And that was like that. And it happened around Halloween. Well, by Christmas, I was about 10 kilos up. Like, it goes to show the power. Like, once I knew what I wanted, the weight. Now, again, Christmas time, great time of year to have to put on weight. Like, when you think about it that way, like, you know, but once I had that between my teeth, the weight, like, by the time January came, I was back, you know, to a healthy weight. Like, my face had filled back out, like, because you get colour back in your face, you look healthy again. Like, if you saw me in September and saw me in February, you'd be like, were you drip fed? You know, it was that quick. But that's, once you get it, okay, I want to fix this. It's not easy, but you get it, you go, okay, right, I now have a new goal in mind. We've turned this around. I've hit the rock bottom. The only way now is up. And that really helped.
Did it feel to you, like, did it feel like a toxic internal relationship with yourself?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's so much, like, the way I have a new book started. I'll be a long time writing it, but it's about anorexia specifically, because my first book there is like more about, I suppose, young life in general. But I have this theory, like, when you Google anorexia nervosa, or you hear people talk about it, all the talk is about body image and food, which is understandable because it's the biggest symptoms. Do you know what I mean? It's top of the pile, but the only way I can describe it is like anorexia is like a football team. You have 11 players. Body image and food are 2 out of the 11 players. Anxiety and depression are like centre midfield. They're a big key part of it that aren't mentioned a lot. And self-hatred, as you mentioned there, huge. Like, I was saying this in a podcast a few weeks ago, it's like, when you think about, do you ever hear the book Atomic Habits by James Clear? Do you ever hear that book?
Yeah, I've read it, yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, I've listened to it, sorry.
It's brilliant. And he talks about like how a lot of our habit setting things comes from like our primal instincts. Yeah. So he was saying like the reason why we crave high calorie food, let's say, is because 1,000 years ago, or 3,000 years ago, if you found a piece of cake, that would keep you alive for 3 days.
So you'd eat it all.
Exactly. So we don't have to do that now, but yet the craving comes from the same mechanism.
Yeah.
And so it made me realize like we have three inbuilt mechanisms are don't starve, find company because we're a pack animal, and reproduce and find a partner. Anorexia will interfere with all three because it causes social isolation. It'll cause terrible problems in a romantic relationship because of the insecurity, the self-hatred, and that saying, you can't love someone else until you love yourself first. You can't love yourself with anorexia. And then the starvation bit is obvious. So I said to myself, right, how powerful is an illness that it's able to override all three of those primal things? And I think the key to it, or the key element of it, is there's an element of not feeling good enough or not feeling worthwhile, and that kind of self-hatred. And I think the key to overcoming it, because I don't want to use, they say you can't cure it, you have it for life, but I think the key to overcoming it is, how do you address that self-esteem? How do you address that self-worth? How do you learn to love yourself again? And when you do, then you can push forward. And I think for me, that penny dropping moment is like, okay, I love playing football and I love how I feel in that moment. That's what's going to pull me back. And again, the love for that is more than the love I have for being this weight and, this feeling I have now. So it's like, what's the more powerful of the two forces, really, is the gist of it, I suppose.
Was there more eyes on you after the would you call it treatment?
Yes, yeah.
So would there be more, say, family eyes on you, more friends' eyes on you? Was there more
kind of keeping an eye on you? Like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, and
did you notice that?
Yeah, like, this isn't happening again, kind of thing. And that's like completely understood. It's like, because again, like when you go through it, it's tough on you, but it's so tough on your family as well. And like, my siblings were only young, but I'd love to know, did it have an effect on them? Because like it does bring tensions to a household and it brings stresses and all this kind of crack. But yeah, there definitely was. Now, to be fair, thankfully, I would say, so I got discharged after a year because got back to a healthy weight, and the council basically said, right, you're in a better place now. We're happy to let you go. I came out of that under the misconception that I was cured, which isn't true because you have it for life. But I was, I may as well have been cured compared to where I started, that kind of thing. Like, and there was about a year where I was still half watching when I was eating, and then about a year, around the time I was turning 15, that completely turned around, because by that stage, I was now healthy weight, but like I wasn't growing very quickly, so I was smaller than the lads around me, getting picked on in school, and like playing like under 16 football. So I had no shoulders, I had no presence. So I started going the other way. I went, okay, now if I want to have a good life, I have to build up and bulk up, and eating all around me then. And I gained about 4 stone in 2 years. So once I got to that point, the eyes kind of came off me, because it's like, okay, right, now he's going hell for leather the other way, which is, better than going up than down, so. But until that point, there was vigilance, and understandably so.
If you were to describe the book for anyone that was going to read it, how would you describe it?
In one word, I'd say honest. That's the first thing I would say. And like, excuse me, it's very raw. Like, it goes through ages 10 to 20, the anorexia diagnosis, coming out of it, counselling, sort of going to the gym helped me build up and build self-confidence. And then when I went to college in Galway, again, another big transition. My anxiety hit me very hard. I went through a spell of depression when I was 19. It talks about that. And I suppose the gist of the book, and again, as I was saying about the cover there, the two chairs. The two chairs is like two people having a discussion like we're having here. And the gist of the book is talking can solve anything, because it solved so much for me. But there's so much in the book that's like, there's some like, not even controversial, but there's some very hard-hitting things I say. And like, I remember when my mother read it, she was like, God, some of that stuff now is rough. And I was like, I says, mother, we're not posh, but I call her mother as a piss take. I says, mother, am I lying? No, everything you said is true. I was like, well, then I can say it. Do you know, now, and if I wrote it now, there's some things in it I mightn't have said. So I'm glad I wrote it at 21 when I was a bit younger, a bit more immature, and a bit more like, not rebellious, but I was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to say what I want.
Going to say what I want.
Exactly, yeah. Whereas now I'd be like, will I get a job if I write this? Whereas at the time I was like, no, this is my bit and I'm going to just say it out and no fear of judgment really. Like
the name Normal,
yeah.
is that in terms of not being normal or trying to get to be normal?
So there's kind of a layered reason behind it. So the specific reason is when I was about 17, I quit playing football. So like by that stage, I had gotten bigger. I was put a pair of shoulders on me. And like, ironically, now that I was at that stage, given that I was big enough to play like minor football, the presence of size and physicality at that stage, it kind of highlighted the fact that I didn't have the skill and the talent. You know, it was like, oh, now I am quick enough and fast enough and strong enough, but the two left feet are still there and they're getting around it. So I that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to stop playing football. And I went competing in powerlifting then for a few years and I loved that. And that went far better than football ever could have. And where the normal thing comes from was when I quit playing football, people kept asking me why. And like I was no loss as a player, you know, in terms of talent. But like people were asking me, not like, oh, why did you quit playing? It was more like a, why did you quit playing in like an interrogation way?
Yeah.
And I kept, it kept being said to me like, oh, normal young lads play football and that's it. And I went, right, so around me, normal young lads play football and go for a few pints and, you know, buy a car the minute they're 17. I didn't drink, couldn't afford a car and could save for college and I liked maths in school and I liked going to the gym. Now, there's nothing wrong with the idea of normality that was around me, but I was different to it. And I realised, okay, I can change who I am to fit in and not be interrogated, or I can keep doing what I'm doing. And I picked the second one. And it was the best decision I ever made. And it also comes from the whole thing of like, it felt as if it wasn't normal to have an eating disorder or have a mental illness. I felt that sense of like, not that anyone made me feel that way, but I felt a sense of alienation when I was young because of that.
Yeah.
And I never told any of my friends about the diagnosis until I was about 19. So like I was 7 years in with anorexia and not telling anyone about it. So that's, again, it comes from that. It's like, I felt abnormal and weird and different because of this diagnosis. But at the end of the day, why? Like we're all human. Everyone's different. So it's like, is there a normal at all? Really?
Yeah, you should have all normal. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Talking about the cover of the book and like what Keith mentioned there, like it is fairly abstract looking. And if you look at the name of it, Normal, it's in bold red writing.
Yeah.
And to me, if I was looking at it from a distance or you were going into any bookshop,
yeah,
you could nearly substitute it into, say, like a horror section or something to do with a nightmare. I was just wondering, in some sort of a way, when you might have been thinking of that maybe image in your mind, like, does it sort of relate to maybe a time in your life that you would consider to be a bit of a nightmare?
Kind of, yeah. So like the colour, I remember thinking, I Googled one day, what does like the colours of book covers represent? So I think like purple represents royalty, and then I think black was like power and red was rebellion or whatever. And like for some reason I had a soft spot for black and red covers. Like I thought they stood out. And I noticed a lot of like murder mystery and detective books of that kind of colours. And I remember like the cover was the last thing of the book to be sorted. Like the whole editing was done, everything. And I remember thinking, people were asking me, like, oh, what are you going to do for the cover? And I went, that'll come to me someday. It'll come like a flash of insight. And I never did. And I got to the end, I was like, what am I going to do with this cover? And like, I had a couple of ideas first that were, you know, kind of fell through. And then I walked into Easton's in Galway and I went, right, okay, whatever catches my eye, I'm going to go with that. And there was a book, same kind of colour scheme. And it was called 50-50. It was like a interrogation, murder mystery kind of book. It had two chairs, one black and one red. And I went, that's perfect, because out of everything, it just caught my eye, and I took a screenshot of that and sent it to the editors, and I went, I want something like that. And they came back with that there, the two chairs, but it looks like two crying eyes. And when I first saw it, I went, I don't like this. And then about an hour later, I went, I fucking love it.
Yeah.
And it has that kind of like, from a distance, it's like a crying face or like an alien, but then you look closely, it's two chairs, and I love that, because again, it's the whole thing of conversations. That's, I went with that in the end.
The only reason why I was bringing that up was because obviously you mentioned there, you know, like sort of buckshotting into your teens, you're met with this, you know, an eating disorder, and then you talk about, you know, coming out the latter end of your teens with depression, you know, and it's sort of piles this period of your life together where, you know, it would be quite nightmarish looking back at that and thinking, even as a father myself, like with kids, thinking that there could be a period of your life that is nearly lost to you. Do you feel like that you lost a bit of your childhood or your, you know, late teens with that type of?
Fantastic question. And do you know what? I feel very blessed to say I have no regrets. But the only I'd say question mark I have. So my sister, who's 14, she's on the Cavan under 14s team. We're very proud of her. Proud isn't even the word.
Done.
And like growing up, I dreamed of playing county football. Like that's like, I got 8 A's in my junior cert, and I would have burnt that to play for Cavan once. That's the level of obsession I have with it.
Yeah.
And when I go and see her play, my first instinct is I'm so proud. But in the back of my mind, I often think, because of when the anorexia diagnosis came and the weight loss was at that point of like the start of puberty, like my whole growth between 13 and 15 was kind of slowed down, and I was very much a late bloomer. Like, and I often wonder if that hadn't happened, given how dedicated I was to sport and how much I loved it, could I have been a better player? And that's the only ever thing I wonder. Nothing else crossed my mind, because everything else I'm like when I look at my two siblings who are 16 and 14, they have a very different teenage life to what I had. They're much more sociable. They're much happier. But I think to myself, if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I accept that fully.
Yeah.
But the thing with the football, that's the only thing that ever tickles my mind. I go, God, I wonder. But at the same time, I'd never swap anything. I'm so happy where I am now. And like, going back to the whole thing there, like the late teens, like to look at me at 19 and 20, you wouldn't have thought anything was wrong. It was kind of, would you call it, like high functioning depression? It was like, I was in college, I worked part-time, I went out and I drank and I had to crack, but deep down something was going on. But I didn't go to counselling. I managed to pull through it. And I wouldn't say that was a time in life lost. I would say there was great lessons, because if it wasn't for that period, like the idea for the book came during that period. And again, it's like, well, if I hadn't had that dip, we wouldn't have that day and I wouldn't be sitting here. So it's like, one of the final points I have in the book is, if your present now is great, no matter what happened in the past, it worked out well. It's something was cooking and boiling up, and the finished product
brought you to where you are.
Exactly. Yeah.
What was it like finishing the book and actually reading it when it was done?
It was surreal. Like when I had it in my hands at the end, it was some feeling, like it really was.
Am I right in saying it was shortlisted for Book of the Year?
It was indeed, yeah, there last year, and that as well was some feeling. Yeah, that was
a proud moment.
Yeah, it was like just so much work coming together at once, and it's like it's with delayed gratification. It's like, you know, you work on something, you have so much passion in something, and then you get this recognition for it, and it's like, it's hard to put into words. Like I remember giving a talk in a college in Cavan one day, and in my talks, I always mention like alcohol and drugs, because I think you can't talk about mental health without saying it. But I'm always cautious, because if you talk about drugs in a school or college, people kind of go like, oh, fuck, we mightn't hire him again. But I always said, you know what? I will never butter up the story. I'm always going to say it how it is. And there was a gentleman, I'd say like late 30s in the front row. And he came up to me after, he shook my hand and he said, I'm so glad you mentioned drugs, because he said, I turned to drugs when I was 18 because I felt like I had no other choice. And he says, it took me 20 years to get my life back. He said, he squeezed my hand. He said, please keep doing what you're doing. And I went, no amount of money in the world can recreate that feeling. And I thought, you know what, that's what all this has been about. So like, it's moments like that when the book came out. It's moments like that, what that man said. You can't buy that. And that's what makes all of this just come together lovely. Yeah, absolutely.
No, 100%.
You take it a step further, then you co-found a Normal Mental Wellbeing.
Yes, indeed.
Who's the co-founder of that?
So my friend and my business partner, Tiernan. So it's a funny story how this came about. We we've been doing these talks for 4 or 5 years. The book came out in 2020, and then like started getting invited into schools. You know, I'm the main speaker, but if we go to college, Tiernan might speak as well, because he has a great story of his own about, you know, how he got where he is in his career. And like, you know, we were both, like, I was working full time, he was studying, and this kind of stuff was kind of like second or third down the priority list. So we were just, whenever we got a call to go to school, we'd go, and might do 3 or 4 or 5 in an academic year, that'd be it. And then So Tiernan worked for Squash Ireland, and I didn't know what squash was before this. It's, I was like, oh, it's kind of like tennis, and it's something like that. And he was at some event one day. It was like, so with the sport, they have like funding from the European Commission, and he was at one of these events, and he overheard someone talking about like voluntary projects, and he went, that kind of sounds like what we're doing. So he approached one of the organisers, and they were like, oh yeah, what yourself and Conor are doing fits into this. And so we applied, throw a hat in the ring. We thought, what, it might work. And then we got the funding, and it was fantastic, because now, like, one of the worries I've always had is like, we're not qualified mental health professionals, and we're going into schools talking from experience, and it's worked, but you always worry people will go like, do you know what you're doing? Is this going to work? But now we had the backing of a very official, organisation. And once we got the funding, it was okay, right, now the pressure's on. Now we have a project title. We're talking in schools, in colleges around Ireland. We have an aim now. Now the pressure's on. Now we have to do at least 2-3 talks a month. Annual leave can't be an issue now. We have to force our way through it no matter what happens. We have to start making content. It's like, that phrase, the fire under your arse. And like, that's what we needed. We needed that to just push on. And it's been fantastic, because like I say, we've done like, 15 or 20 school visits this year. And like, we give students like surveys, anonymous surveys, before we go in and then afterwards, to see how we've altered their attitude towards mental health. And some of the feedback, lads, like, so like we have questions, and then at the end we have like a open, like, if you have any comments you can say. And some people are saying like, this is life changing. I'm going to go to a counsellor now. I didn't realise I was bottling up so much. And like a handful of ones saying like, I had suicidal tendencies, and this has helped me so much. And you're reading it going, because we never had such direct feedback before. Like, someone might come up to you after a talk and say, oh, that was brilliant. But when people are writing anonymously, they'll say so much more. And it was just like, wow, this is needed so much. And like, our end of project, the project will end now at the end of September. And our end goal is take all these surveys, build a report, bring it to policymakers and government, and go, look, here's what happens when you have these conversations in schools. It's making a great difference. And we're hoping to like push mental health policy in Ireland going forward. So that's our kind of grand goal. So it's been a massive year for us, like, so, and again, it's just, it goes to show when that pressure's there, you'll put that step forward. And, we have our website now, we write blogs and create content, and like the feedback on them posts alone has been brilliant. Because I don't know if you found this with the podcast, but like, I have no fear of public speaking, but I had so much fear starting to post online, and I don't know why. Like, I think it's because when you talk in a room to an audience, it's confined to that room.
But the audience chose to be in that room.
Yeah, exactly.
They can either leave or not be there. When you're putting something up online, it's there for everyone.
It's free for all, exactly.
Yeah, you make a good point there. Like, but in terms of the kids or the students that go there, like, maybe are they forced to go to it? Not that forced,
but it's part of the curriculum, let's say.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like, I say, when it's online, it's like, anyone can see it, anyone can comment. And I had that initial fear, and then I went, Conor, do you know what? You've already put your life on paper for the public to see. There's not much more. You're not hiding anything. Just go for it. And like, I'm so like, I think when you create anything, you have to have that mentality of like, fuck it, may as well go for it. And like, there's a poem called The Man in the Arena. I love it. It's like, I will never be with those cold and timid souls that know neither victory nor defeat. It's like, I'd rather chance it and fail miserably than, like we talked about Liverpool earlier on. Do you remember when Liverpool played Barcelona a few years ago and they bet them 4-0 at Anfield? I think Klopp said something like, if we're going to fail, we'll fail our way. And I love that. Like, I'm actually getting chilled saying it now. It's like, I'll do it my way. And if I fuck up, I fuck up. And I would rather have done it and go to my grave going, well, we gave it our all and we failed miserably, than to go to the grave going, God, I wonder. And I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned as I've gotten older, is I'd rather know the outcome than wonder, that kind of way. Like, and that's been a big part of it. Like,
it's like one of those things where you're putting a bit of lightness out there into a dark space.
Yeah.
And there'll always be support there to rally behind it.
Yeah.
And the negativity, which will come because there's negativity out there and there's nothing that can be done to completely rid that in the world.
Yeah.
That you just have to hope that that one bit of good light, message that you're putting out there will reach at least one person with one post. It doesn't have to be, the 1 million likes or the 1,000 likes. If you're getting 5 likes on a post, those 5 people could have really needed to hear that day, and that's important, you know.
It's funny you say that. Like, I think they call it vanity metrics. Like when you're creating content, you want all the likes and the follows. And I remember there was about 2 or 3 months. Like I've only been making videos now about 6 months, and about 2 or 3 months in, I was getting obsessed with how many people have seen this, the numbers, like. And I had to stop and I went, Conor, you didn't start this for numbers and followers and views. You started this to make an impact. And like you say, it could be 5 people see it, but 2 of them could have really needed that. And like, funny enough, I've always had that mentality with talks. It's like, you could have 400 people in front of you. Go for the 1 in 100. You might, half of them could zone out. Then 10% might really enjoy it. But 1% might be like, fuck, I needed that more than I ever knew. So it's like, the way I look at it, I think we've spoken now to about 6,000 students. So 1%, that's 60 people who are potentially life-changing, we'll say, have been affected to that extent. And so I had to, like, I've always had that mentality in talks, but I had to bring that mentality to the social media element of like okay, aim for the 1%, aim for those, like. And what's funny you say about the negativity, I've kind of gotten past now, and I'm like, because the support I've received and like the good feedback and the people I've met and the networking, like meeting yourselves, that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't started posting. But I was saying this on a podcast recently, I'm living for the day I get a hate comment, because I'm like, if you've got a small following, there's not much chance of getting a hate comment. A hate comment has to come from someone who doesn't really know you. So if you get a hate comment, you've gotten to...
made it.
You're outside the barrier.
Exactly. And I've promised myself now, if I ever get a hate comment, I'm going to reply with, I love the cowboy emoji. I'm just going to reply with that. And every negative comment I ever get, and if I ever get to 1 million followers, every one, I won't reply to the good comments, but every negative one I get a wee cowboy emoji. And I've promised, that's my promise to myself.
I'll send you one later on just to get it.
You know, because it's like, don't retaliate, don't just the way.
But you know what the other amazing part of it is as well, is that you can live on the want of likes. But when you look at the views, you know, you could have 400 views on your video and no likes. Because the most important people that have viewed it might be so fearful to like it.
Exactly.
They don't really want the people to be seen to be liking it.
And
that's true. It's more about the reach rather than the engagement, I think. You know?
You're actually right,
And I know that nearly goes against the whole thing of everybody has to talk, but sometimes people
are in
just
the
have
shadows,
to listen.
People are
exactly. It's like, if it's getting to people in any way at all, whether they like it or not, if it's getting to them, fantastic.
And it's there, like, you know, and it's there forever, like.
And I suppose that's one of the problems as well. It's like, if someone doesn't like it, you don't know that they've gotten it, but the main thing is they have. So a teacher once said to me in a school, he said, your work will have impacts beyond what you'll ever believe. And I said, you know what? I have to trust that statement. If I don't get likes, don't get comments, don't get shares, fuck it. Hopefully the person that needs to see it will see it. And that's the priority. That's the main goal.
What do you think we're still doing wrong in terms of talking about our own mental health?
So I have a few opinions on this. So I think the first problem is, like, the stigma is still there. And do you know what? I think indirectly, COVID did great things for mental health. I know the actual experience was terrible, but I think COVID brought mental health, the conversation around it, to the forefront in a way that it could never have been done before. I think that's fantastic. And particularly among men, like I see more men now talking openly and advocating for it, and that's fantastic. So I think that's a good thing, but we've a long way to go yet in terms of the stigma. So I think the thing we're doing wrong, particularly as men, is bottling it up. Like I say this often to young crowds, especially if I'm talking in an all-boys school, because there still is that mentality of, like, you know, big men, real men don't talk. Like, big strong man is meant to be still in a storm and, you know, not flinch. I say to young lads, I've bottled up my emotions and I know what happens. First of all, there's research that says if you bottle up things long enough, it can cause physical pain, like bottled up anxiety and prolonged stress can cause physical health problems. I've had that myself. It can cause strained relationships. It can affect your concentration, your work, your sport, your mind-body connections all thrown off. Nothing. It leaves you with nothing but your pride. Oh, I'm proud I didn't talk about it. I'm a big man. It's not worth it. And I say it doesn't make you less of a man or less of a woman if you break down crying or talk about something. That's the first thing. The other thing as well is there's so much fear around the labels of, like, anxiety, depression, all this crack. When you think about physical health, we have no fear to those labels. Like there's a guy I worked with, and we're talking about, he had IBS, And we talked about it as if it was the common cold. No stigma. He's like, oh yeah, I can eat this. This doesn't agree with me. And I was like, oh, okay, funny enough, no stigma at all. If you talk about having, like, I had asthma, but I grew out of it. And I seen this meme once, like, oh God, imagine having asthma. Imagine being bad at breathing. But like, I laughed at that. I was like, oh, it's just, there's no stigma. It's like, oh yeah, asthma could be genetic, whatever, grand. If you're diabetic, there's no one has ever judged anyone for having a physical ailment. And if you go to the doctor and you go, here's my symptoms, and the doctor goes, oh yeah, that's ABC-itis. I've seen that before. The moment you hear a label, you go, oh, thank God. If it's common enough to have a label, it's common enough to be cured. If you go to a doctor and he goes, I've never seen this before, then you panic. So the physical health labels almost give us comfort, but the mental health labels, we go, oh no, I don't want that. Whereas if you, like, I'm diagnosed with anorexia and I'm diagnosed with anxiety. So like a doctor knows, okay, you have anxiety, you can't have caffeine, you can't have alcohol, because they like, a doctor told me this 12 months ago, and I was like, oh, cutting out caffeine is the best thing I ever did for anxiety. A lack of sleep will hurt you far more than it will hurt the average person. So because I have that label, a doctor can give me far more information about what's good and bad for me. So having the label has only helped me. So it's like, I think we have to get to that stage of treating a label with mental health with the same kind of nonchalance that we do with physical health. It's like, that label's there to help you, not to fence you off as like, oh, here, you're in the fucking weird group over here with, you've got anxiety or you've got ADHD. It's like, no, that label enables professionals to understand you better, and then you can understand yourself better, because you can go, okay, right, if I read a book about anxiety, I can read it and go, I have that. Okay, this helped this person, and you help make sense of it. Yeah, because at the end of the day, the brain's an organ. I heard this great phrase once. It's like, people wonder why we have mental health problems. The brain is a lump of meat with electricity going through it. Oh, what could go wrong? It's like, it's good. If you can get kidney problems and have asthma and have acid reflux, well, then you can have a problem with your brain as well. But it's mad how differently we look at that. The other thing as well, I find, is like, when we talk about mental health, we talk about it in when we talk about, we'll say, psychological traits, we talk about it very passively. So if you talk about someone, you go, oh yeah, my friend John, he gets very anxious in this scenario and he's very calm when this happens. That's the way John is. But notice how we would never talk about physical health in the same way. You'd never say, John has a broken leg. That's the way John is. No, you'd say, John has a broken leg. He has a cast. He's in the hospital. He'll be all right in 6 months' time. With physical health, it's like, how do we fix this? What medication? What do we do? How do we change our lifestyle? Grand, let's do that. With psychology, it's almost like, we're set in stone. We're not. The brain, the concept of, I think it's called neuroplasticity, the brain can change. Even, so say the brain finishes forming at the age of 25, but even after that, you can rewire yourself, you can overcome anxiety, you can overcome certain stresses, you can literally change the way you think. The brain never stops. It doesn't set like concrete. I think people have to realize that. It's like, no matter how anxious or depressed or how you feel, or no matter how negative you are, like, because it's so common in Irish society to be self-deprecating and put yourself down. You can rewire yourself out of that, and you can overcome, and I'm living proof, you can overcome any negative thought you have about yourself, simply because the brain can be rewired. And like I'm eating through books about this at the minute. It's like, I think if people realize that, it's like, okay, how I feel mentally is not set in stone. I think if we can get that across to people, that's the first hurdle. It's like, because it gives them hope. Then it's like, okay, whatever I'm feeling now, that's not the end. I can get through that. In the same way I can cure a bad stomach, or I can take an inhaler for asthma, I can tackle my mental health. So I think we're getting there. That realization that we can work on our mental health, and it is fixable in a sense.
And is that as much responsibility on the person themselves?
Yes.
And the people that are around them to notice that within the person?
But that's a great point as well, because like, a doctor once made a great point to me. He said, Conor, the way you should look at your physical health, for instance, is you're driving the car, the doctor's in the passenger seat, and there's a nurse in the back taking your bloods every so often. He says, a lot of people, the way they treat their health is, the doctor's driving, there's a surgeon in the passenger seat, and they're in the fucking boot. As in, it's like taking no responsibility. They're not in charge of the direction. It's like, people that go to the doctor and go, oh, you gave me these tablets, it didn't work. But yeah, their diet's terrible, sleep is terrible. They're not taking any ownership. So we know we have to take ownership of our physical health, and we see the benefits of that. You have to do the same thing for your mental health. But now, conveniently enough, what's good for the body is good for the mind. So like, I say to young people, the biggest thing for your mental health is adequate sleep. And that means putting that down and turning it off, which young people, of course, like, you know, you have a teenage son,
Yeah.
fairly roll their eyes. Oh, all right, Dad, yeah, I'll put the phone down.
That's literally.
Oh, yes. But best thing for your mental health, it's like, and I found it as well, like putting that down, everything up here just kind of like calms, because we're not built to be on screens all the time, and we get overstimulated, and it's like overload up here. So when you put the screens down, it helps. It's like, get away from your screens, getting some movement, eating better, drinking water. And that sounds like such simple cliche advice, but I think like if you eat well and sleep well and do those things, you're 80% of the way there to better mental health. And like one of the reasons why I'm on medication for anxiety now about 12 months. But the reason I was prescribed that was because I went to the doctor and I went, look, I read the books on anxiety. I meditate. I have cold showers. I sleep right. I eat right. I train 4 times a week. What am I doing wrong? He said, literally nothing. He said, the fact that you still feel anxious after all that indicates you may have an anxiety disorder. Are you open to medication? But the only reason I was offered medication was because I'd already ticked all of the boxes.
Yeah,
so it's like, if you start ticking those boxes, you'll notice mass improvements in your mental health. But as you say, it does take that element of like, okay, I'm going to take ownership and start, taking these steps forward. So it does take that.
Yeah.
What mainstream supports are available to young people out there right now who are looking to maybe reach out either anonymously or maybe publicly?
So there is, like, I know there's the online therapy, there's BetterHelp. Now I know that's not free though. I think there's Jigsaw one. It's in Galway as well. And I think CAMS is one as well. I'm not sure of them off the top of my head, but there are a few things you can do. But the one thing I would say to any young person who is struggling, before you even think about going to a counsellor or thinking about those steps, talk to a friend or a family member first, or, if you're a teenager, a trusted adult. Because I believe counselling is incredible, or going to a therapist, but not everyone necessarily needs it. And it's not necessarily a magic fix either. So you have to tick the box, as we said, take ownership. But sometimes, like, as I always say, AI can take over the world. But the one thing that will always remain constant among humans is a problem shared will always be a problem halved. Whatever you're struggling with or worrying about, whether it's as small as your exams or as big as you think it's all going to end, talk to a friend or family member or whoever. And then, with their guidance, you can look, okay, what's the best avenue? If you're in school or you're a student, you can talk to a guidance counsellor or whoever may be able to direct you. But if you really are struggling, therapy can just do wonders for you. Now, so I can't remember, I think CAMS was the one I was sent to when I was a kid. But there are privately available counselling. Again, I know publicly available resources in the Republic of Ireland are pretty stretched, and going privately, you could be looking at 50, 60, 70 euro a session. But to anyone who's contemplating it, I would say, for me, I've spent quite a bit of money on therapy. Best investment in the world. Incredible. In terms of an investment that will pay dividends for the rest of your life. Unbelievable.
On the journey that you've been on, have you had the opportunity to look into some of the harrowing figures maybe behind what you've gone through, and maybe people who haven't come out the other end of it? Is there a high suicide rate when it comes to the likes of eating disorders and anxiety?
I'm not sure the exact numbers. I do know, I did read somewhere, they say anorexia nervosa in particular has the highest mortality rate of all mental illnesses. We'll say per capita who has it. And the 3 causes of mortality are cardiac arrest, organ failure, or suicide. And funny you mentioned that. Someone asked me once, how did I come to accept the illness and kind of move forward? There was 2 things. The first one was, I realised there's people who are deaf and blind and in wheelchairs. If this is my ailment, I'll take it all day long. I'd happily have this and be able to see, hear and walk and deal with this. That's my cross to bear. That's fine. The other thing was, a friend of mine, his cousin passed away a few years ago who had anorexia. He was about a year or 2 younger than me. He very sadly took his own life. And I went to his funeral, and I remember thinking to myself, again, don't know the exact numbers, but X amount of people with anorexia who are male will commit suicide. By a stroke of luck, he's on one side of that stat and I'm on the other.
Yeah.
How easily that could have been reversed. And that, for me, was the greatest dose of perspective of no matter what happens, thank God I'm still here. And now, it's terrible. I said to my friend, I said, God, I felt bad being at someone else's funeral thinking about myself, but nothing else in the world was going to give me that sense of perspective. And I'm very grateful that I have that. And it's my hope that whatever the exact figures are, it's my hope they'll come down. And that I hope that more conversations like this and more open conversations, people will realize I'm not alone. Like now, you can have all the support in the world and the worst can still happen, but it's my hope those numbers come down. That's my only hope.
You can work on that. You know, the organ in your body, you can work on muscles within your body, and you can rehabilitate physical injuries very, you know, strenuously but well. And it's fairly open to everybody to see, you know, anybody suffering with any type of physical injury, but suffering with mental health like can be a lonely place where people can't really see the progression. Only you internally know the progression. So it's very hard for maybe somebody to see either a relapse in it until it's too late, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's just something for I think the likes of this podcast, the likes of what you're doing, in the schools and the work that you're doing is it's really, really important. And I think for anybody to be able to read the book, hear your story, hear your journey, it's if it's one person, it's a success.
Absolutely.
You know, and I just think it's really important. So fair play to you.
Thank you very much.
Fair play to you, juggling that with a career as well.
It's not easy. Do you know,
I wouldn't say so.
Well, funny, one of the things that's worked out well, so that, like, and props to the company I work for. So if I burn through my annual leave doing these talks and down to the wire. Like last year, there was we've 20 days annual leave. There was 5 days unpaid leave and there was a sick day here and there as well, which, you know, we'd say no more about that. But, you know, it's like I said, when you want to do something bad enough, you'll do it. But the one that's worked out well is if I'm doing a talk in the morning and if I'm close to, if I can be back at my desk by 1:30, I can work American hours, which is say 2 to 11 here, which is 9 to 5 in New York. Now that is a long day. That's a very fucking long day, but it works because I suppose one of the unseen sides of public speaking is, like, I don't really get nervous when I'm talking, but when you come off stage, the come down is ridiculous because naturally, even though you're calm, you're like, there's one of me and 400 of them, your adrenaline spikes and like what goes up has to come down. I think as Tommy Tiernan once said, you have to go below baseline to then come back up to normal. So that drive home is something shocking. Like, it is just terrible. So like if I do go into work straight after talk, it's a long day. But a cup of coffee here and there, you get through it, like, you know. So it is, but it's worth it. It really is.
That's to say. It's
it really is.
For you, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Honest to God.
Fair play.
Fair play to you. I guess we'll ask the hardest question of them all.
Oh, it's very hard. Spotify playlist.
Oh yes, yeah. Now I've seen what's coming out the road in the car, and I'm torn between two. So I'll give you the two, and you can pick. So, Ordinary Man by Christy Moore.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Or a more modern Birmingham by Zach Bryan. They're two of my favourite songs, and I can't pick between them.
I think I listened to the Zach Bryan one before we decide.
Yeah.
I don't know if I know
haven't
that
heard
song.
the Zach Bryan one yet. What I'll do is
It's brilliant, yeah.
Yeah, I like Zach Bryan though, so.
Yeah. We're in a country phase at the minute anyway, aren't we? So,
Yeah.
It's having a great revival. I love it. I love it. Zach Bryan's fantastic. Yeah. And I love the intensity of Christy Moore. It's just like the eyes closed, you know.
Yeah, giving it socks.
Yeah. So they're the two, yeah.
Do you know what? I think with the importance of the interview and the message that's shared, we might stick the two of them on.
Oh, thank you. That's an honour. Thank you.
We have the power to do that.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, it's in your hands.
Yeah, the golden buzzer, the Simon Cannell golden buzzer going on.
The one that the near miss, the one that lost out to the two was I'm a big Artie Monkeys fan. Are You Mine's a big favourite of mine. So that missed out.
And you're just being greedy now.
Yeah, no, you're not.
You're not getting any now.
No.
It's been amazing.
Thank you, pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thanks a million.
Safe travels.
Thank you very much.
That was great talking to Conor. An emotional story, but definitely one that needed to be heard.
Yeah, and look, he highlighted a lot of things that we mightn't even have known about it. In terms of family dynamic, you know, it doesn't matter what household you're brought up in. As he said, he was in a loving, you know, well-fed house, and you know, still affected him, you know, in terms of, you know, trying to be better at sport and stuff like that. But I think he's a great advocate for, you know, anorexia, and, you know, great public speaker for kids, especially because of his, you know, how charismatic he is. So yeah, I just wanted to thank him for coming on. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been really eye-opening for me as a parent, like to see how early these type of struggles can start to produce themselves.
Yeah.
And having kids similar age now, it's going to really sort of make me more aware of what to be looking out for. And I think that's what it's all about. It's just raising awareness, like you said, being an advocate for mental health, anxiety and eating disorders. It's giving people that early signs of indications of something that could be challenged within a child or even an adult, and trying to maybe get in there and step in before it gets worse.
Yeah, and just a quick mention that he has published his own book called Normal, which can be found online, for purchase, and it kind of goes through the struggles that he had in terms of his disorder, I suppose, and mental health and stuff. So anyone looking to get that, they can find it online. Yeah,
big shout out to Conor for giving us a copy, and really look forward to reading it.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just keep rolling on. We're going to stick with mental health and eating disorders, and we've got a fellow qualified electrician. Doesn't work in the trade right now, but we'll get into that during the interview. You'll see where his life has brought him. Sean Blake is joining us now for the last interview for this episode.
Let's jump into it, Steve-o.
This episode is coming to you in association with Snickers Workwear Ireland.
So jump on to snickersworkwear.ie, see what they have on offer, and find your local stockist.
Sean, thanks for joining myself and Keith in the studio. Delighted to have you.
Oh, thanks for asking me. It's great. Great to be here.
Great to finally meet you, and you have that uniqueness as well, that you're an electrician as well, so keeping a lot of our listeners happy.
You reached out on Instagram there a while back, saying you were enjoying some of the stuff that was being put up, or some of the conversations that were being had, and it was an eye-opener, and it was a delight actually for myself. And then when I thought,
you're one of the only ones that ever said it, so
but just to get the to know that we have another electrician coming in, getting a bit of
get
excited for a little bit of electrical chat. But obviously poignant episode. It's an episode that is raising awareness around mental health and eating disorders, and that's something that we want to push on this episode, and trying to get that to people's ears and people's eyes, and hopefully somebody listening today or whatever day they're listening will take something from it. But just before we get deep into that and maybe go back into like your childhood and stuff like that, we'll talk a little bit about electrics first. So apprenticeship, when did you do the apprenticeship and when did you qualify?
Apprenticeship, I started the apprenticeship, I think it was either 99 or 2000, and what's 4 years? I pretty much was on about 4 odd years, because my phases in tech were pretty good. So I was in Fort and Ballymount and it kind of went on like it's, the way it doesn't usually go that way normally, but it actually did. Then I was in for phase 4, I was in the ESP, and then Kevin Street for phase 6. So I think maybe around 2004, in around that time. So I served my time with a contractor, and then I ended up going into Arenta, that it was at the time, to work as a maintenance electrician there. So again, look, it comes from a kind of a family history, I suppose, with my dad being an electrician by trade. So he would have been like back in the 60s, so one thing always sticks out in my mind, when John F. Kennedy was killed, he was in tech. So that's how and John F. Kennedy was killed in 1963. So 22nd of November 1963. So that's where he was. And then it was kind of a family thing in that he went into work in Arenta, and then my older brother Kieran then is an electrician as well. So he served his time with a contractor, and he ended up in maintenance in the airport as well. So there's a lot of kind of history. A lot of my cousins then ended up being electricians based on that. So
you've seen the good life.
Yeah, I like it. I'd say I have about 7 or 8 cousins who were sparks as well. So
what sector did you mainly work out of yourself?
So like the company I work for, we pretty much did a lot of data comms as well. So it was really everything from, like, you could be in an industrial place one day, a house the next day. Yeah. You could be all over the place. You could be in a shop. That said, you could be in a house, painting a house one day as well. Do you know what I mean? So it was it was across the kind of, I suppose it was a broad range.
But then a lot of it ended up focusing on the comms data. At the time, Cat 5 was the big thing. So Cat 5 been rolled out everywhere. So we were doing a lot of work with that sort of stuff. And then I remember Cat 6 cable came out, and there's buildings in town. They're kind of like, they're just off the Liffey, kind of pyramid shaped buildings. I think they're in Ulster Bank.
Okay.
And I remember Cat 6 was coming out, but it was a lot different. It was real kind of, you know, it's kind of smaller now, but it was like new. So it was really more difficult to install and stuff like that. But I remember this place was one of the first places to do it. So after that, then everyone was just, you know, so the big money was in the comms. So I suppose we ended up kind of doing a lot of that. At that time as well, multi-core copper cables. So we do a lot of kind of installs for that sort of thing. Whereas nowadays, obviously, look, they're all going. It's all IP telephony.
You were the guy coming in with the stool, yeah, sitting in front of the
Pretty
panel.
much, yeah. And you know what? Like, the funny thing is, used to before like we got into that sort of thing, you'd look at these fellas coming in, they'd be terminating the fibre and doing all that, and you think, she's amazing, like that. Yeah. But yeah, like you're an electrician, you're qualified, you know what I mean, 4 years, you go to your college phase and all the rest of it, and like you have so much, like, you know what I mean? But you're looking at other guys doing that, like, you know. But yeah, definitely the electrical for me. I find the electrical trade, having that, even in the job I do now, it's the backbone of it. You know what I mean? Just knowing everything that goes on, like from hanging a television or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It all makes sense to someone who's kind of from a background, that sort of background. You know. For like our younger listeners, we kind of like to ask our guests that are electricians or in other fields. Would you have based your, say, during school, would you have based your subjects against, you know, becoming an electrician? Now you said your dad and your brother. So would you have picked your subjects strategically in mind that you were going to go into the electrical trade? Probably not. Like, I suppose for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do, I suppose. And I felt that was something that I could do because obviously I had the background of it. Like, because when I was growing up, like when I was young, I used to do mixers. So I'd go with my dad and do mixers, like, and like, you know, and I kind of be, you know, that sort of thing. So it's really interesting because there's a pub down the road. Well, it's not there anymore, Kelly's in Inchicore. My dad's from around Inchicore. So I used to do mixers in Kelly's pub, and I used to go with him to do the mixers and stuff. So I kind of always had that kind of in my head. He was probably having a point. You were probably pulling in the cables. I also remember they had a big kind of basement that he'd be doing emergency, like, because, you know, he was just that sort of person who could pretty much do anything like that, you know. So like, it's a small world. And interesting enough, again, one of my uncles started a company called Blacklion Precision Engineering in the 80s, and as far as I know, this was actually the building. The building. Right. No, you only have to realise that. Yeah. So it's strange when you talk about childhood and being younger, you know. Yeah. And then we're in this building. Yeah.
Well, obviously mentioning childhood and being younger, we do like to take our listeners back a bit and, you know, give people a bit of an idea of what challenges or moments in life that our guests have had that might have maybe impacted their future self. So if you'd like to let us and our listeners know maybe just a little bit about where you grew up and maybe where you went to school and what was school like for you? Yeah, so I grew up in I'm from Drumcondra originally, so and I went to a local school. It would have been a junior school, so which was grand. I think it was up until first class, and then it went into like the senior school, which is like second class on. So that was a school that I hated, to be honest. My memories of it are absolutely horrible. I was always an anxious kid. People would call me shy, and it wasn't shyness. It was just a fear, I think, of speaking, of saying anything. I always remember going to school, primary school in particular, and just pains in my stomach, constantly worrying and stressing. And I shouldn't be at that age, you know. I remember an inspector coming into the class one time. I'd missed like 65 days or something in 1 year, you know. But it was the sort of thing where the teacher brought the inspector in and made me stand up in front of the whole class, type of thing. Right. So it just wasn't a nice place. Like, I can remember 2 particular incidents of getting good out, you know, being hit. I remember, like, one of them, for example, I remember standing beside the teacher's desk and checking work, and like him sitting there really silent, and out of nowhere just grabbing me like that and pushing me back, you know. And
just that sort of thing. Like you were just you were just made to feel like you were nothing, you know. And the thing about it was like I would have told my parents, they would have went in, but back then it was like when I don't know, it was the late 80s or early 90s. It wasn't the sort of thing like it is now, where there's straight away there's an investigation and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
It was just kind of acceptable in a way. Do you know what I mean? So like you weren't allowed to have kids then, obviously, but it was just one of those things that, you know, it's not like it would be today.
Needless to say, there was no awareness around mental health or anything like that at the time.
No, look, absolutely not. I mean, I don't remember. Like, I suppose, look, when I was growing up as well, no, there wouldn't have been really much discussion around that, and there was always someone in your estate that people would have just referred to as being maybe a bit odd or something. So that would have been the way I think people were, you know what I mean? And again, people didn't talk about it, you know, so I think they either suffered in silence or they turned to other things maybe.
Did you find yourself being that kid?
I found myself, in terms of anxiety, massive anxiety, and just constant, like, sadness, not all the time, but sadness kind of a lot of time, like always kind of thinking that people were looking at me and judging me and talking about me. Do you know what I mean? Always thinking I could never be good enough. You know what I mean? And I'd always be at the back of the queue. I never went for any football teams or anything like that because in my head it was always a case of I wouldn't be good enough for it, you know? And when I look back at those times, it's like darkness. It's just darkness for me. There's no happy times as such. You know
I was just about to ask you that. Did you find happiness in anything at that time?
No, not really. And
hobbies or?
No hobbies. Like, I mean, I can remember times now. I'm getting better at remembering times that were kind of, that I remember as being good.
Yeah.
Small little times, like, but again, certain things, like I used to remember. I could remember, let's say, a moment of being, when I might have been like 5. And I can remember in my head the room that I'm in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can remember nearly what I'm wearing.
Yeah.
But that's about it. It's like a 10-second flash.
Yeah.
Like, and it's weird because to be able to remember things when you were like 7 or you were 6, and like they're only momentarily 10-second things. So things like that I can kind of remember, you know. Look, my environment was okay. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't bad in any way. I just think with me, I don't know. Like, I mean, like, I'll be honest, I was told I was told I'd some kind of childhood trauma. I don't know what it is. I've done a lot of work with compassionate focused therapy for eating disorders with St. Patrick's Mental Health Services, and so and I've had a lot of input from the psychology end of things. I haven't delved into actually that, what it was, but my childhood was it was just, when I think of it, it was just anxiety and like those things I described, you know. It was always kind of just dark and dull, you know.
Do you think there's a lack of awareness within the school setting in regards to how children should be with other children in regards to inclusion, when you see certain kids who might be maybe excluded from certain what would you call them, groups or social settings?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like, it definitely got, like, I mean, it's unfortunate. I think people just say, oh, kids will be kids, but I don't know. I think there has to be ways to change certain things. I mean, if you take people being excluded like that, I mean, like, that can have a massive effect on someone. I mean, like, being excluded from a group or even being kind of slagged off, or that can, like, if people don't realize how that can actually affect someone and can go all the way into their adult life, you know. So I do think maybe in some places there's not enough there's not enough kind of watching on that end of things. I don't know what's taught in terms of inclusion and mental health in schools, but definitely I think from a primary school level, a young level, they should have education on it. And I think like the schools and the teachers, like, everyone expects them to do everything, and they're bombarded with everything. I think that, like, there should be a standard approach from the government, and they should give schools resources to do it, you know. Because a lot of the time, I think the government will just say, oh, it's up to each individual school or school principal or board of management to do it. So I don't know. I just think I know they are doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and they are trying to make those things better. But definitely, unfortunately, you hear terrible stories of, like, I've young kids myself.
Yeah.
All in primary school. And yeah, you can hear some of the stories, like, and the things kids say to each other, and like, you're like, where are the kids here and stuff? And you know, and I know they don't even know half the time
What
they're
I'm
saying.
talking about, yeah.
But no, it can definitely like affect, like, you know, again, one of the memories I have of being in primary school, I remember a guy coming up and trying to start fighting with me, and he was actually a friend of mine, but for some reason that day he decided, him and a lot of other fellas came over and just started. Now I can remember that, like, and
Yeah.
I'm 43 now, and I
stick with you.
primary school. So that's just, I think that's an example of how that can really kind of stick with someone, you know?
Yeah, and like, I suppose everyone would go through a period of, or even a time where, you know, they didn't feel included, or, you know, felt left out. I know I would have, like, well, like, in general, I would have been okay, but there would have been times when you might have been felt out, or you're in a different group where you felt like you were an outsider. But I can only imagine what that's like to have a prolonged period of that through, you know, a prolonged number of years.
And
What
it
kind of
doesn't
effect
end.
it would have on you? Do you know what I mean?
It doesn't end in the social setting either, because like you could nearly, when we were growing up, whatever was happening in school, you could nearly have a safe space at home.
Yeah.
And now people are bringing it home and they're turning on their phones, and it's continuing on.
100%, yeah.
And it's endless bombardment of negativity. Because I think when you're in that negative atmosphere and mode within yourself, you're all you're going to see is the negativity. Even if the positivity is around you, you're going to miss it, you know, which is very unfortunate. But obviously stemming in then to your teenage years and then into your 20s, did you find any type of confidence coming back through, you know, maybe girlfriends or maybe other hobbies, or, you know, did you do sports even or anything like that?
No, like, I'll be honest, I didn't get involved in the sports because I just didn't think it was good enough. I would have supported again, I would have supported Man United in the glory days when I was younger, because that's when they were in the glory days.
I just stopped you there. Stephen is, like, I'd say you're over the moon.
Yeah. We finally got someone.
You're like the first guest that has supported United.
I actually had a jersey, Andre Kanchelskis, and then, like, I got his name printed back, and then he left. But again, that caused me massive anxiety. Like, you know, so, you know, I didn't even, like, I couldn't, and I don't actually follow my young lad supports Man United and he's big into football, but I can't even watch it now with him as much because I still get that anxiety with it. But like, I know I didn't find a massive amount of things, and what I would have done was I would have started, like, look, I don't know what it's like now, but like, I was 15, 16 drinking. You know, you were right outside the off license for, you know what I mean? And I suppose the only time I ever got confidence was when I was doing that. And like, as time went on, like, I would have went into town and stuff, like fake ID and all that sort of stuff, and all the way up I would have been drinking. And my drinking, being honest with you, it was just for one reason only, and it was just to go out and get completely off my head so I'd forget. And it was never about anything else. Everyone else might be going out for different reasons, just for crack. For me, it wasn't. And it got really, really, really dark. It started to get dark, and I met my now wife when we were 19. And up until that point, I suppose I never really had a relationship. I never. It was a confidence thing, really, as well. I just didn't, you know. And so we met when we were 19, and again, I drank a lot. We got married quite young. I drank a lot all the way up, trying it through, and there was just so many times when I just kind of, like, you know, I remember just coming home and just not remembering. And yeah, I haven't had a drink in 13 years. Like, so since before my oldest was born, I stopped drinking. And being honest with you, I don't intend on ever drinking again. But I can see now what was happening. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, I used that at that time. And I suppose going back to just actually, funny enough, when I was a child, I had one of my biggest fears was I was always anxious about something happening to my mum and dad. So I was always, when they went out the door, I was always afraid. And I was always worried about my dad getting sick, you know? And then my dad got cancer then when I was about 16 maybe. And that was like, you know what I mean? I was kind of, because he went from being, you know, he was able to do, you know, and then he did chemotherapy. So he obviously lost a lot of weight and obviously just wasn't able to do as many things. And then when I was actually 19, he died in 2002. he died. So I always remember him being sick, and I was with Edel at the time, and I remember my ma and him went to Wexford, I think, for the weekend or something. But I remember them coming home, and I always remember him walking up the stairs, and like my ma coming in, my ma was upset, and she said, like, basically that they'd been to the hospital, and he told me, you know, he had not much time to live. So I always remember that he went upstairs in the house, and like I think within it felt like within a week, 2 weeks that he died, and like to see him go from it's frightening to see what it does to people. It takes every little bit, and the different to the point where he couldn't.
You had that anxiety of the fear of
Did it
a
feed into
parent
fear?
being or becoming sick, and then they actually do.
Yeah.
Did it feed into the fear? I was going to ask the same thing. Yeah.
And like to me, that was like, you know, now if that happened to me when I was like 11 or 12, it would have been like, and like even at that point, a lot of my stuff after that, and a lot of my kind of the way I was, I'm sure I had stuff to do with it. But when I do look back at different times in my life, and I remember talking to someone about this, and I think it was a psychiatrist or psychologist, and I was listing all these things out that I'd gone through, and like they turned around to me and said, like, Jesus, like, I mean, all those things, like, they're really significant, like, you know. Whereas at the time, I suppose for me, it was just, it was significant, but I didn't want to kind of, I suppose, think of it in that way. And yeah, like, it was a really weird time. And like, I was lucky, as I said, I was with me, with my wife now. Like, and it's funny because we were waiting, like, we didn't want to leave the house because, you know, in case he died. And I went down to collect her from college. She was in St. Patrick's teaching college in Contra, and we were going off somewhere else. And I always remember thinking, I just have to go home for a few. I just had to go home to do something, and it was real definite. I have to just go home. And I went home. I walked in, and he had died before. You know what I mean? And it was weird. It was really, really weird. And the years after that, again, they just took on a lot of different challenges. Like, I was doing my apprenticeship at the time, and that was tough as well, because it was tough because sometimes you were away from home, and like, it was just the drinking and all that sort of stuff. Like,
So the job you were doing was literally an extension of who he was as well, you know.
And you know, the thing about it was as well, like, I always remember working. So he worked where he worked, and his office was there in a certain building. And the company I work for were setting up an office in the same location because they were doing a job there. And I always remember going in. They were like, "Oh, there's a desk over there. You can have that to bring to the thing." And like, I remember going into the building, and it was actually his desk that they were taking. Like, I didn't say anything at the time, but I remember just standing there. I actually just was like, you know,
For real.
yeah, like, and it just seemed to affect everything. Like, kind of went. Then I went on, like, it just, like, I started like working out, doing weights and all this, and that was a massive obsession as well.
Yeah, grand.
And like, it just was always something. Do you know what I mean? It was always something to constant.
Was anything ever said, I suppose, during those teenage years, like from, I don't know, your brother, sorry, I never asked the age of your brother.
My brother, Kieran, he's 4 years older than I am.
Yeah, so was there anything ever said from him, or I suppose Edel or anything like that, to say there might be something wrong here, or was it just kind of, were you masking it, or?
Yeah, no, do you know, Edel was the one who did.
Yeah.
So Edel always copped these things. She knew, and again, I suppose it was noticed, but it's me accepting it, and I kind of didn't accept it. With the drinking and stuff and all that, like, I don't think she would have noticed as much as when the other habits started coming in, towards eating disorder, anorexia. She noticed that, definitely. And I suppose with my brother and that, he would have grown up around the time, similar timeline to me, and like going out and getting whatever, it was just what you did.
He was doing his own thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, as you do, like.
Yeah, and like, he'd a young child and stuff like that, so he had his own stuff going on, and plus he was mourning as well, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So to be honest, my whole family, there was a lot of stuff, like a lot of turmoil, obviously, with dying and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, everyone was kind of
That went on for a while. How long was he suffering with the cancer as well?
He got it when I was about 16, and then it went into remission, but then it came back.
Yeah,
So
that's
the timeline's about 16 up to 19. I kind of very hazy with, like, being honest with you, some of the memories from back then, but it was about 16. So I remember being in secondary school, and he had it, you know.
You've packed that moment in time, like a lot of people put that away, like you mentioned, and it's like, you know, you're tapping into little bits of it, which can obviously be traumatic in a sense, which can be dangerous as well, you know what I mean? So you have to be quite wary about what you're tapping into. But you mentioned there just in the previous conversation about working out.
Yeah.
Was the working out, was that just to take your mind off things, or was it to improve yourself, or was it, there's what some people call like a hate workout, where you're just putting yourself under strain and hardship out of hatred?
To be honest, it was about wanting to be good at something. I felt like I had something there that I could do and I could control, and I would, and that's what it was. It felt like, because my whole life I felt like a failure, I felt like useless, and I didn't think I was worthy of life. So I found something back then that I could do and I could control. Now again, that all just fell apart because kind of, you know, drinking and stuff and smoking and all the rest of it, like, you know what I mean, going out kind of took over all that sort of stuff, you know, until eventually when I kind of settled a bit down and I didn't go out kind of anymore and stop drinking and stuff, you know. But then obviously that's when everything else started coming up as well, you know. When did
you have your first child?
So we Stephanie Dale got married in 2007, and then our first was born in 2012.
Right. And you have 3, is it?
4
now.
Yeah.
So in the space of the first till the last being born, was there a progression of certain moments that you would have noticed within yourself that might not have been noticed with everybody else in the family, that you could start to see maybe a depletion within yourself in regards to your mental health?
Yeah. I think definitely, because I suppose what happened was I was having, obviously, like, I never felt worthy of having Adele. Like, I was always waiting for her to find someone else, because that's just always there with me. And then when obviously Jamie was born, it was like I'm not good enough to have this, you know what I mean? I can't do these things because, you know, they'd be better off without me, because they could, you know. And that sounds terrible, but that was the mindset that was there, you know.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, it was that constant, like, thing in your head about, like, you're not good enough, and, like, you know, why bother? Because you know. And then my little girl Ellie was born then in 2014, and again it just went on. And then Chloe and Senna were born, and it just went on all the way up, that, like, I have these kids here, and anything that went wrong, and I mean anything that went wrong, like a wheel fell off the buggy, it was my fault. Everything was my fault as far as I was concerned. And, like, so anything that went wrong in life, that does go wrong in anyone's life, I blame myself for it. And, like, I self-harm, like, and that's really hard to say as at that age. I would hit myself. I might, like, hit, you know, I'd often have hit my head off a wall or something like that, and that was, you know, that's really hard saying. I don't know if I've actually said that before, but that's what would have happened when something went wrong, that I just blame myself completely. And I do that in private, you know what I mean? So it wouldn't be kind of seen, you know what I mean? So yeah, like, it's, when I'm thinking back about those days, it's pretty, like, yeah, and it was always blame myself for everything, you know. And a lot of that wouldn't have been noticed, because obviously I wouldn't do it when anyone was around. You know, so the odd time Adele might realise my mood has dipped. And I'll be honest, I always knew that I had low moods and stuff like that, but it wasn't something that I ever kind of thought, because, again, low mood, depression at the time, and even now, people don't want to kind of say, you know, they don't want to say they have that.
When, I suppose, did it come to a head? When did you decide that, like, this is getting serious and I might need some help here?
Well, I suppose the anorexia, obviously.
Yeah,
like
it's a physical.
So I kind of, when that started coming up, I mean, like, I suppose when I was talking about the working out previously, when I was when I was younger, that was more kind of weights and kind of doing that end of things. But then I suppose I think it was about 2011 or 12. It was 2011, 2012. I think it was a work day when I started running. So so did a bit of running and another bit, and then people started saying, "Oh, Jesus, you look at my L, all the usual."
Yeah.
And it's like in my head straight away, I'm like, "Oh, hang on, I'm actually good at something.
Good at this, yeah.
I'm good at this. People know it, and I can control it." So started doing that. It just increased and increased. Started weighing myself every single morning, because if I got up in the morning and I hadn't been down, if I wasn't lower, it would be massive anxiety, and it would be a signal to me to lay off, to not have as much stuff like that day. And the running then just became like, I started doing races, like, 5K, 10K, half marathon, and then it just went, the food end of things then started going down. So I bought into what you're told, like, so socially really nowadays, it's like calories, everything's low fat, and I would do calorie counting on going to shops, and I always say I had no idea what a calorie was then, how it affected my body. Still don't have a clue. And as far as I was concerned, the lower the better. So eventually I went through years of doing that, dropping food groups, saying, "Oh, my stomach's sore, I'm not going to eat that, I must have intolerance to it," and stuff like that, And eventually, between that, I started doing the bike, and like, I couldn't see this. Like, so people did say to me, like, geez, then it's that whole, "Oh, you're looking great," and like, because you don't want to let that go. Because if the next time, the way it starts getting in on you is that you feel that if the next time I see that person, they don't say that to me, that means
there must be something wrong.
Yeah, and it means that I've put on weight. You know what I mean? And again, it's not about the weight; it's because it's seen as a failure because I wasn't able to control that. So then you work harder. And then I was working harder and harder, and then your brain starts to get so kind of out there that you start judging how people look at you. So someone might look at me a different way, and then I'll be like, and I couldn't see this, and my wife did. She knew by the habits, because I was down to the point where I wasn't really eating a whole lot, and I was basically eating the same thing at the same time every day, and the running was getting like massively out of hand, and like, she had made me go to the GP, which I did. So I went to the GP, and the GP kind of said, "Oh no, you're grand. It's just you've been healthy, and it's fine." So like, Edel was like, right, she accepted it. I hadn't owned up to it.
Yeah.
And then, things just got like a different level, like my level of anxiety if I didn't get to go for a run. Like, when I'm thinking back to that now, like, there was no, I'm not going to get out for a run. I was going to do it. No matter what the rain, if it was rain, hail, shine, I would do it. And the thoughts of not doing it would nearly be like a death sentence. It'd nearly be like, I'd rather not be. It would be complete anxiety, low mood. It was unbelievable, and it just controlled everything to the point where, like, our holidays as a family, like, the big thing, like, we couldn't go abroad. So we went to Disneyland last February for the first time, because she couldn't, if she was afraid, because of the way I was. Like, we went to Central Parks, as an example. I was up at 5 in the morning, running for hours type of thing. And I'd never eaten with my full family in a restaurant up until after all this, because I just didn't.
Was it like an unachievable personal best goal that you could never?
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah,
you're never, like, it was never good enough.
That's exactly it. And what happens is, with me, it was the next one, the next one, the next one, the next race. But then it clicks over to a stage that happens so quickly that none of that matters anymore. So it's like, it's kind of like, I always describe it as being, it's like you have a split screen. Like, basically, it's always there. Like, no matter what I'm doing, no matter what I was doing, it was always there. So everything was based around it. But it gets to that stage where none of it matters anymore. And it's just about doing it to disappear.
So you never, I suppose in the start, you probably did, but really, you didn't really enjoy it.
Never enjoyed it.
It wasn't for enjoyment.
No, it was basically for
acceptance.
It was for, and it was for punishment as well. Like, it was for, like, again, things are hard to say, but I'll be honest, like, I would do it, and sometimes I'd be like, I just wish this could end. And I remember being out one night at like 6 in the morning. I remember being up in a place in Swords, and I just started crying. Because because I knew I was like, this is so painful. I can't stop it. I can't stop doing this, and I could never see a life. And yeah, it just gets to the point where you're running to. For me, anyway, I was basically running to die, to kill. Like you know what I mean. And as hard as that is to say, people kind of find it hard, I'd imagine, and I get it. Like they think like, oh look, you're male first of all, and you're whatever age, and you're 4 kids, and you're married. They find it hard to understand how I could say that. But I mean, for me at the time, I would have rather been dead, because as far as I was concerned, they're better off without me. Because
you can hear that in your voice now, that it's still so hard to say now, even looking back at it. So how difficult is it at the time to even raise that emotion? Because I feel that like if you're going to your loved ones, who, you know, you've stood beside each other, and, you know, you get married and you say through, you know, the best of times and the worst of times, that worst time was the worst it could ever possibly be. And that is there a moment of self-thought within that, or is it literally just, you know, I don't want to be here anymore?
And it's actually the opposite of being selfish.
It's not being selfish at all. Like,
it's like, look, I mean, I'd said it on like, I mean, for me, it was that, like, it was, I didn't want to be, I suppose I didn't want to be here. I was just so tired.
Wait, did you feel like a burden to yourself?
I felt like a burden to everything on this earth.
Okay.
I felt like a burden to my family, to my wife, to my kids, to me. And I just wanted to disappear. And like, I have said it, and it wasn't me. And the way it wasn't me. It had taken over me.
Yeah.
I always describe it as being at the bottom of my body shouting up, and I can't be heard. And yeah, I didn't want to be. I was so physically and mentally tired as well. Like
And were you still working at this stage?
No. It was around. There was a lot of it around COVID, and I was on parental leave. So again, I was on parental leave for a long time, and I drop the kids to school, and my anxiety would be massive to get home to jump on an indoor bike after being running all morning, and then it spiraled out of that. And again, even like I stopped feeling hungry. It took so much from me, in that, like, even like I've pictures of when I was holding newborn. One of them are all of them pretty much, and there's one that I'm sitting there, and I know, looking at it, what I'm thinking. I'm thinking in my head about my eating disorder and all those things that I do and I need to do, and that's so kind of like, now it's so sad because I can see it in my face. You know what I mean? And
you look back at certain pictures, maybe of birthdays and stuff like that, and you know, you see maybe enjoyment of, you know, like the likes of cakes and takeaways and stuff like that, and then knowing in your mind that when you look back at those pictures, it was a struggle for you.
Yeah, like it was complete. Like, you know, even on that, like, one thing I used to. This is how it'll show you how it gets in on you so much. Like, I drop my little girl off to ballet every Thursday, and I would go down. I used to walk around. Again, this isn't the easiest thing to say. I'd walk around the shop, or I'd look at food, but with no intention on eating it at all. And I got to the point where I used to drop her off, and for that hour that she's up, I'd go down, and I'd know what I was doing then. And it would actually be a thing. I'd go and I'd walk around and look at food. I'd look at videos about food and stuff like that. No intention whatsoever of eating it. I couldn't. But again, that is the sort of, it starts to eat away so much at you that it's incredible, the power of it. Like people don't understand it. Like, a lot of people will say, oh, it's as easy as just eating. It's not. Like, it's a serious mental illness. Like, you know what I mean? And it's for me, it's not about, as I say, food or weight or what you look like. It's about that something, that pain underneath that's driving it. And for me, like, as I said, obviously, like, there was a lot of stuff there, and like, fair enough, it came out in the form of anorexia and an eating disorder for me. But I suppose I found something again that I could control, and no one could take that from me. And again, it was a way of kind of being able to, I suppose, at the point of it, of being able to, as I've said before, kind of just not be here anymore. And that was my method of it, I suppose, at the time, that I could look back on now and reflect and say, yeah, like, I was
going to ask you that, obviously looking back on, like you mentioned, the photographs, holding your kids and knowing that you had alternative thoughts at that time, do you use those negative moments in a positive light now to try and say, maybe I'm never going to be like that again?
Yeah.
Can you use that? Like,
yeah, like, being honest, and I don't look at it back. I don't look at that and kind of think, like, I'm in a frightening way. You know what I mean? I look at it and I think how far I've come.
Yeah, because you said you've mentioned your tendencies, like to maybe dismiss yourself or think little of yourself. Because it could be easy for you to look at those photographs and say, like, I was a bastard, or you know what I mean? I was. Yeah. What was I at that time? And then go within yourself, but to actually look at them and use them in a positive kind of spin for yourself, like.
Yeah, and that's really, really important, because if I was doing that, and what's really important is that I'm able to say that wasn't me when I look at them, because if I wasn't able to say that, like, those things would,
Yeah.
And like, it is hard. I have to keep telling myself, because look, I've been fairly public with it and with the documentary and RT and stuff, and there is going to be people out, I'm sure, who think these things. I mean, there was an episode of Gogglebox that covered my story, Gogglebox Ireland, and the reactions of 2 people in it, they weren't negative, but they actually got me, like, you know what I mean? They kind of upset me a little bit, like.
Was it ignorance, maybe?
Yeah, it was more like there was no badness in it, but I mean, like, it was just what it was. But again, I got over that and realising that, look, it's understandable. Like, I mean, anorexia as it is very misunderstood, and there obviously is that perception out there that it's only young girls. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do, and I did find it hard to say the word anorexia for a long time, but I kind of look at it as in that it's what happened. You know what I mean? Like, and it was a pretty hard time going through it, and then plus going to hospital as well.
It's a lot deeper than self-image as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it cuts a lot deeper than that. Like, because I mean, like, people would use the word anorexia, and like, but eating disorders is a broader spectrum.
Yeah,
completely. Like, they can focus in on anorexia, but it goes both ways, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Anorexia is actually probably like, you've binge eating disorders, you have bulimia and things like that. So again, anorexia is focused on because they look at someone and they're underweight. But binge eating disorders, and like, you could look at someone and you might know, like, you don't know from looking at someone, but they're going through an incredible amount of inner pain, that they're using those behaviors to basically dull that pain, or whatever it may be. Like, it's really just a way of coping as well. It's coping with something behind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, we've had Brian Penny on here before, like, where he's talking about, like, the likes of heroin use and stuff, where it's trauma and past traumas, and it's not being addicted to the drug. It's just the drug is maybe masking or maybe blocking out some of the past traumas, and the food in that sense for the binge eaters, or the lack of food, can be that for the likes of yourself,
Exactly. It was a success thing. It was a coping mechanism, and I never really. It's when you mention, like, drugs and alcohol and things like that. Like, I never understood it until I've gone through all this, to how, like, and completely, it makes complete sense. You know what I mean? You have a past trauma, you're trying to forget, so you're going to go to those things. And like, if it hadn't have been anorexia for me, it would have been something else. I always say, if I hadn't met Edel, my life could have gone a completely different way. But I don't think I would have got through life without something, whether it be the anorexia, alcohol, or whatever it may be.
Was Pat, was that a saving grace for you?
Yeah, like, I was so lucky with that, in that again, Edel had got me to go to the GP again, and I was put on medication, and I'd gone back a few times, and I ended up with a really good therapist, who eventually said to me, Sean, you're really, really sick, you need to go. And she gave me the details for St. Pat's, and I ended up going in for an assessment with them, and them basically told me that day, they said, you're really, really sick. They diagnosed me with anorexia nervosa, and they told me, you need to come into hospital pretty much straight away, which I wasn't expecting, because my heart was really bad, and told me that my heart could give out at any time. And that if I chose not to come in, it was against medical advice, and that you were to basically tell me to go to an A&E. They told me, like, in the time I was going to the side, try not to walk upstairs, don't do anything like that. And again, I had no energy. I could barely walk up the stairs. But in between the day or two before I went into St. Pat's, as soon as I was nails of my own, I jumped on an exercise bike, and the smallest little bit of energy I could actually get up, I used on that. So, you know what I mean? That's the level you're talking about. So I went in, when I went into Pat's, it saved my life completely, because it was really hard. I'd never been in hospital, and I certainly didn't think I'd ever be like in a psychiatric hospital. Like, I remember going in the first day and getting checked in, and I always just remember sitting in my room. The nurses had gone, and I just broke down. I cried for 3 days. I think I had a breakdown at that point. Again, it was very difficult. If you're in an eating disorder, or if anyone who's been in an eating disorder ward, they'll know it's a lot different. So there's certain things that you probably can't do, and you know that other people can do in other wards, and you're watched a lot closer, kind of. But what I got from St. Pat's was meeting people like me. There was only 12 of us, so we all thought the same things. So you're meeting, as my wife says, it's like you found your tribe. We all kind of were able to, you know what I mean? And we all understood each other. And I needed to be stopped, because nothing was going to stop me from doing what I was doing until I wasn't here anymore. And that's the reality of it. So when I got in St. Pat's, I suppose I felt like I'm here and this is stopping me. And I needed that stop. I needed to be stopped.
You mentioned the therapist and having a really good one. What were if I'm allowed to ask it, what were the conversations like with the therapist? Like, at that time, did you know there was something wrong, or were you delusional to the fact that there was something wrong, or were you so tunnel visioned that there was nothing wrong?
No, at that point I knew, because what happened was I got to the point where I was so sick and tired, and I remember going to my wife, because obviously she had with the whole first time, and I went into her and I sat down and I said, I think I have a problem. Right. And she looked at me and I said, I have a thing. And all I could think of, because I didn't actually know really what the disorders completely were then, and I said, I have a problem with food. That's the only thing I could think of. And she knew like straight away, like anyway. So she was upset, because obviously she was really annoyed, started blaming herself because she knew this. But like, again, the GP, everyone had said. So she was like, look, we'll get you, you know what I mean? And then that's when we went to the GP, and again, that's when like I was put on medication, because the GP had said, oh, it's OCD, let's say. And it was only when I went back a few times, the therapist I went to, she was kind of like, I was telling the story and stuff and what I was doing. And then I do remember I changed, because if I had something coming up, let's say I had to, like, I socially isolated, so I don't really have any friends, because and if there was something coming up where I had to go into the office, let's say, for an hour, and it was in 2 weeks' time, I'd go overdrive. And she knew I went in 1 week, and I just looked, and I remember looking at me, and she was like, and the next time I went to see her, that's when she said to me, like, she actually said to me, you're anorexic. Like, she knew, and she said, I can't help you, she said, because this is going to kill you. So she knew because of what I was saying, but I think definitely one of the big things for her was when I went back at one stage. I think it was a 2 week break, and when I went back, she knew by looking at me physically, I think, that I was just...
That couldn't happen in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
There was something wrong.
Yeah, and it was these little things. It was little things like having to go to a social occasion for an hour or two that just overdrive, like, for me,
How important is it to get the message out there that although you've gone through the system and you've gone through St. Pat's, and the team in there have helped you probably understand it better as well, and coming out the other side of it, it's not a silver bullet, that it's still, like, there's still work to be done after it in order to keep yourself at a certain level.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest time, and I nearly left St. Pat's, like, I nearly actually was walking out. I hated it at first. And the maddest thing about it is, the day I was leaving, and a couple of days after that, I was really, really down. I wanted to go back, because I suppose I lived in this place, slept in this, ate. You know what I mean? It was my safe place. But that is really the beginning of it. Like that, like the thing about the inpatient experience is it's really just to get you medically stable. It's to get you, you know, okay, because, and the real work needs to start after that. I mean, like in my own case, and what I think is you need to find what's driving that eating disorder before you can actually get over it. And it's everything, because you're going out on your own. You don't have, like, you know, I was with them for like 11 weeks and after on every day. But again, it's trying to figure stuff out. You're dealing with then your body changes, which is huge. And then you're trying to, when that eating disorder voice is quieter, then other things start coming up, other anxieties. And I always remember one time in the middle of it, I hit an extremely low mood. Like I've never felt anything like it in my life. And it was one of the most frightening things that happened to me. I remember just thinking, nothing is going to make me happy. And I know in the past I would have had been down and stuff, and you can think of things that might make you happy. But I remember this sitting there thinking, oh my God, what the, like this can't be right. Like I've never felt anything like it. And then that happened a few times, but that was learning for me. It was learnings. And you know what I mean? Every time I hit those blocks, it made me stronger. It definitely made me stronger. And even now, like it's a few years, and I still get those days. I mean, I'll be honest, like even like simple things like, hold on, the way I feel, like some days I just feel like, you know what I mean? You might feel bloated or something like that, and like my stomach, I don't think my stomach will ever get back to, I'll always have issues because of it. But it's having I suppose I did a lot of therapy as well, which has kind of got me into that place where I don't hate myself. So I'm kind of able to get a little bit over that. I'm able to manage it better. But if I didn't have that, I don't know if I would have lasted. You know what I mean? It was just that connection with St. Pat's and the ongoing therapy and ongoing work. And things I try myself, like speaking, like use my voice is one thing. It's spent me all like not. And it's given me power now because it makes me feel like I am fighting back. Many years of keeping my voice quiet, and now I feel like it's helping people, but it's not just about helping other people, it's about helping me too.
Self-therapy.
It's a control thing again, like where you're in control of your own life, basically.
Yeah, and it's amazing that I like to not hate yourself is incredible. Like, and it's just so important, like in terms of awareness with it, because I'm doing everything, and I can't try and explain to people that it's not like I've had 5-minute conversations with people and they've walked away. Like, she said, I didn't know that's what eating disorders are about. I didn't realise they were so deep, and that there were different types of eating disorders, and it's not just about someone looking like they're underweight. And certainly after doing the documentary, there was a lot, and you know, I've got involved with a lot of different voluntary work. So I shine in this mental health organisation, and they're amazing. And I got involved with them, and they've been a massive part of it for me because I was able to join. I'm an ambassador as well, so I was able to join the group, meet new people, speaking, and I did something recently as well with the launching for the mental health policy, sharing the vision, and the people I'm meeting and the opportunities I'm getting through them, and it's incredible, like, you know. And then there's body wise and places like that as well, who have great information and awareness on eating disorders. So there's a lot of stuff out there that's kind of got me through, but definitely, when I went doing the voluntary thing, and I'm on the St. Pat's Service User Council too, but working with Shine and that has been incredible for me. It's been a massive part because it's really hard to go out and to meet people and to talk to people, and that has pushed me out so much to do that. And I did a talk down in Cork one time, and just getting up out of bed, driving down to Cork on my own and doing it felt amazing, you know what I mean? And it's those little things. So
you found what you're good at. I know you took the long way around.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like, yeah.
It's, you know, the help you're giving other people, like, I'd imagine is unbelievable. Like,
is there pressures that come along with the advocacy in regards to maybe feeling like you are a voice for others? You know?
Yeah, you know,
responsibility is a good word.
Yeah. Sometimes at the start, particularly, I was always afraid because you see, when it comes to eating disorders, you do have to be not afraid, but you have to be careful what you talk about too. So, like, when you're doing interviews and stuff, not talking about weights or not talking about particular behaviours and stuff is a really important part of it. And I was always very anxious around that too, thinking, oh, did I say this? Did I say that wrong or whatever? So, but like, then I kind of started thinking to myself, like, I'm not going to say those things because I know those things. I know how bad they are, like, you know what I mean? So that pressure came on, and I used to the pressure, obviously, what people might think or whatever, but I've gotten so kind of, which is really unusual, something I never thought I'd say. I gotten so confident in myself with it because I sit back and I think, hang on a second, like, I'm in front of 180 people or whatever. I lived it. You know, you could be sitting in front of 180 medical people who didn't live it. I did. I know what it's like. So they don't know. You know what I mean?
Yes, you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you dream better now?
I don't know. The dreams can be a bit strange. It's funny. Again, it's the way your mind works. Like, if I'm in a particular anxious mood way, or something's after happening, I generally know because I have to assess it. But my dream, the one dream I do have a lot, is that I'm on my own, and like, it's always goes back to when me and Adele were younger, and it's a dream of me trying to get to her, and I can't get to her, and I'm on my own. And it's just this thing of not being able to, and I might pick up a phone in the dream and I'm trying to dial her number and I can't. And it's always when we were younger, and it's just this thing about being alone. And every now and again I get that dream, but I usually know there's something going on, there's something driving it. But in general, dreams and sleep are way better, because my sleep before, I didn't really sleep as much because it was just anxiety to get up and get out. Whereas now it's just like, you know, like, well, that said, an early lie-in for me is 8 o'clock anyway. Yeah, and you know, I'm so used to that. So it's a lot calmer now. Look, I'll be honest, and again, I don't think I've talked about it before. I take medication as well that helps with anxiety and stuff like that. I don't know if I've actually said that before anywhere, but I do, and no shame in it. It helps. It really does.
That's what I was going to say. You'd obviously have general maintenance to keep yourself right as well.
Yeah, and the thing about it is with medication, I suppose it's not for everyone, but the medication alone won't do it unless you're able to manage it yourself as well. So yeah, like, and I have no, I suppose it's not something I usually say about the medication side of it, but there's no shame in it whatsoever.
No,
and it helps.
not at all.
So, like, you know what I mean? It works for me, and at the end of the day, it's we all deserve to live it.
How important is it for the likes of not just yourselves being advocates for mental health and eating disorders, but the likes of, say, podcasts and RTE, not forgetting about the likes of yourselves, especially men, and the high numbers of suicides that we have in this country at the minute as well. That there's a lot to be said for keeping it in the public eye.
Yeah, 100%. And like, podcasts in particular are absolutely amazing for it. And this as an example, because, you know, it's making it okay to talk about the things. I mean, I have a friend who I did my apprenticeship with, and I actually work in the same company as him now. And like, I met him there for the first time in years, and I was just able to talk to him, open up about it and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it's been brought out more. I think that people are allowed to talk about it, and it's really, really good, and particular amongst the same men. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and if you talk about, when I think about, like, even the trades and stuff, like when I was when I was doing my apprenticeship and working as an electrician, I wouldn't necessarily think of this is a group of people that I might have been working with to open up about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To open up with it. Whereas I think, like, it's amazing when you do, because like when I did go and tell some people about everything after it all happened, their response was like amazing. And some people tell me about their own things, you know what I mean? And there was people that I was dreading telling, because they would have been very past remarkable people. And like, the funny thing about them was they were like, oh yeah, no, I kind of knew. Do you know what I mean? Like, so, and the interesting thing with the podcast is as well, there was a lot of different things got me to realize that I was sick. And different podcasts played a big part in it, because there was a few podcasts I would have listened to, and they would have had people similar to this in recovery from an eating disorder. And the thing I told you about walking around the shop, for example, that was, I heard a girl talking about her recovery, and she mentioned that. So although, like, and you know, I know those people talking about their behaviours and what they did and stuff, that got me kind of, oh, hang on, all those little things actually got me to to that point of realizing, because you're like, I'm not the only one. Do you know what I mean? And like, even if someone is listening to this, whether it be male or female or whatever, and they're like, oh, hang on, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be about running. It could be going to the gym and bulking up. But what I always kind of say is like, how would you feel if you had to go 2 weeks now without that? Would you be able to cope? Do you know what I mean? Like, because I injured my leg, I ran and still I made it worse. So you have to ask yourself questions: how much of an impact is that having on you every day? Is your life dictated by your exercise, you know, and your field? So
It's holding that mirror up, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
The least that would come of this, and even the RTE documentary as well, is, you know, at least people are going to ask the question like, is this a trait that I have in me that's being portrayed on the program or on the podcast, like, you know?
yeah, like, because I can't be the only male at this age that has, you know what I mean? I do know 2 people have come to me and said they had family members who, one in particular, who's getting treatment for it now, and they just said they didn't know men could get it, you know.
Yeah, like you said, it's kind of well known with young girls, and that's purely just a, you know, obsession to maybe look good, or, you know, they're being bullied and told they don't look good.
through the magazines.
But this is a different kind of an angle, like, you know.
The highest, I suppose, the highest people with anorexia, like, it is females. And again, what really got me was when I went in St. Pat's, there was 12 of us. I was the only male, and they ranged from age of 18 up to maybe 30s, and they were the most incredible people, smartest, most intelligent. They could be running the world, but they were all stopped from their college courses because of this bloody thing, you know. And it's so frustrating, like, because again, it's the same for them in that they would have had things deep down pains that they were using their eating disorder as their coping mechanism, but it stopped their life at such a young age. And like, you know, they were incredible people, and like, I'll never forget them, because they treated me no different than anyone else, and they could have looked and said, oh, who's this, you know what I mean? They didn't treat me like everyone else, and just amazing people, you know.
Well, I'm no professional on any type of you know, assessments or therapies and stuff like that, but I've had the chance to look into the likes of ADHD and autism recently, through my own kids being assessed, and looking at it from the male side to the female side. And I think what you mentioned there is like, with the likes of ADHD within girls, they mask it a lot better than men.
Yeah.
And I think it could be the opposite when it comes to the likes of the eating disorders, where because girls, the type of groups that they're in and how they have to sort of blend themselves into the whole makeup end of things and beauty and stuff like that, it's harder for them to mask it. So that's why they get maybe diagnosed a lot more than the men, where I think the male mentality is we're fine, we're okay, we don't talk to each other about things. We soak it all in, and that's down to everything with traumas in regards to death and any type of mourning around death and stuff. I know it myself. You soak it all in, and it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back then, and it comes out. And I think it's similar with the likes of the eating disorders. You internalize everything until to a point where it's nearly too late, you know.
Yeah, and that's it exactly. And I early like warning signs, awareness is so important, because if you do catch it early, like, you don't have to go down that road. And I think sports in particular, and running clubs and different things like that, like, I'd love to see so much more awareness of eating disorders in those areas. And I genuinely think it's just they don't understand, you know what I mean? They don't know enough about it, because those little awareness signs, if you got help or you got into therapy to figure out what was driving that eating disorder before, it might get to that point in no return stage, because like, it's extremely hard. I was lucky. Obviously, I had private health insurance. That's how I was able to get the treatment I did. If you don't and you're on the public system, it's pretty non-existent when it gets to the stage where you need inpatient care. So if I just feel the awareness is massive for eating disorders. And, you know, generally as well, I think I talk to my kids about mental health. I always tell them, like, no matter what is going on, talk, because I'm just like, don't bottle it up, because it'll come out in a different way. May not be an eating disorder, it could be something else. So it's trying to get them to talk about their feelings and things like that. Like, was so important, and they're so, I hope anyway, are so good at it, like, now, you know what I mean?
And for them to be able to then even maybe notice things in other people as well because of talking about it,
And that's it, exactly, yeah.
Apart from your obviously being on here and the RTE, is there anywhere else that someone going through the same thing can, I suppose, find some literature or anything to help them, get back to themselves, I suppose.
Yeah, body wise is the Eating Disorder Association, like for Ireland. So again, really helpful information, and really helpful when I was first kind of getting into this. The literature helped me, and even when I was actually in St. Pat's, they had a stand in there that I used to read it, and they do like a thing called a pillar program for families. So again, the family going through is watching someone like is pretty traumatic in its own way.
Yeah.
So they have great supports for that. They also have a helpline, and they have an email service help as well. But the information, it's great because it goes through all the different types of eating disorders. And again, that's really important, as you've said. Yeah. Not just to have like you're underweight, like this
one blanket.
Yeah, there's plenty.
We'll stick the body wise information into the show notes as well for people to find out. So for anybody who's reading the show notes and wants to find out a bit more about it, just the information will be there.
No, it's definitely it's a good amount of information. It's brilliant on it,
I know myself and Keith are really thankful for you giving us the time coming on here and sharing personal and traumatic and really insightful information that will hopefully help people learn, or maybe even trigger something in somebody to go and seek a bit of help if they need it. So I want to thank you for coming in and sharing that with us.
Thanks very much.
Oh, listen, thanks. I always say to people, like, I always get thanked for doing it, but I always say to people like yourselves, thank you, because you're helping me in my recovery by letting me speak and giving the platform to raise awareness, which is like incredible.
Brilliant. I appreciate that.
Before we let you go, quick one. Song choice, Spotify playlist. What song would you throw on there?
If I was as a song, that describes everything for me. And I don't know if you know Pink Floyd's Comfortably Numb. So that song means a lot to a lot of people. If you listen to it, you'll know how I might relate to that.
Yeah.
And it says a lot for me. So it's pretty much the one that would have to go on it,
Brilliant.
Deadly, we'll stick
that one on. It's been a pleasure.
Great, thanks very much.
Cheers, Sean.
Thanks very much, Sean. Cheers.
Right, Keith, another episode in the bag, and I think it's one that will probably stick with us even more than every other one has.
Yeah, look, I always say I really enjoyed that one, but technically, it was hard hitting and hits a little bit different than some of our usual conversations. But look, the two boys in the end of it, they're doing great things for, I suppose, the disorders and the mental health side of it. So I suppose ended on a good note, and just want to thank them for coming in and sharing their stories, because I think it really does help people suffering with it. And like you mentioned a couple of times, it kind of opens your eyes up to, I suppose, your own kids and people that you know. So just gives us the kind of the symptoms or the signs to notice it early.
Yeah, 100%. And I get into a rhythm every episode that we do, getting the guests in, talking to them, doing a little bit of research after, and doing the show notes. And sometimes the show notes can be fairly throwaway. It's, Stephen and Keith are talking to this guest, Stephen and Keith are talking to that guest.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoy the episode. But this week, there's going to be some very important information on the show notes.
Yeah.
So if you've been listening to this episode, and if anything has struck a chord with you, or struck a chord with about somebody that you might know, there's going to be information within the show notes regarding certain organizations and people that you can contact that will help you along the way.
100%, yeah. Look, and that's what it's about, kind of highlighting anything that we can through the podcast, and giving these people and these advocates for the different causes a voice, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just want to say big thank you to our sponsor, Robust Lighting, the world's leading LED lighting company, for facilitating these interviews.
And a special mention to Snickers Workwear Ireland for their support of the podcast as well.
Yeah, and if you have been interested in what you've heard today and want more insight and more valuable information, make sure you head over to wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a follow to be notified when the next one drops. Take it easy.
Talk to you next week.